welcome to this story, where the serenity of nature unfolds with each gentle step of the falconer and his majestic companion, the falcon. Amid the tranquil woodland, the falconer moves with quiet grace, tending to his bird. Their deep bond, a testament to trust and patience, as the falcon takes flight, soaring through the cool morning air. The forest awakens with soft symphonies, the rustle of leaves, the chirping of birds, and the distant murmur of a stream. With each graceful movement, the falcon dances across the sky, a living embodiment of freedom, as the falconer watches with quiet reverence. In the stillness of the woods, time slows, and peace envelops you, guiding your breath to match the steady rhythm of nature. The journey is filled with quiet moments of connection and reflection, inviting you to drift into restful sleep. Let the soothing embrace of the woodland carry you into dreams, always a place of calm and comfort. As the soft glow of dawn gently illuminates the woodland, filtering through the dense canopy of towering ancient trees, casting delicate patterns of gold and green upon the moss-covered forest floor, the falconer moves with slow, deliberate steps, along a winding path blanketed with fallen leaves and delicate wildflowers that sway lightly in the cool morning breeze, the air crisp and fresh, filled with the scents of pine, resin, damp earth, and blooming flora, inviting deep, calming breaths that soothe the mind and relax the body. Perched tranquilly on the falconer's gloved hand, the majestic falcon stretches its powerful wings with graceful deliberation, feathers shimmering with iridescent hues of bronze and gold that catch the soft morning light, its sharp eyes keenly observing the serene woodland, scanning the landscape below with ancient wisdom honed through countless flights and patient training. The falconer's movements are smooth and purposeful, every gesture a quiet expression of the profound bond shared with his companion, forged over years of mutual trust and understanding, each motion speaking volumes about the delicate balance between control and freedom that defines their relationship. He inspects the leather jesses and reins with practiced hands, ensuring they are secure but comfortable, allowing the falcon to move with ease, yet maintaining the essential connection that binds them together. With a gentle nod, the falconer signals the bird to take flight, and with powerful rhythmic wing beats, the falcon ascends gracefully into the cool morning air, soaring high above the treetops, its wings beating against the invisible currents, a living embodiment of grace and freedom. Bird circles wide, its sharp eyes ever vigilant, watching for the smallest movement in the forest below, its instincts finely tuned, a reminder of the patient balance between action and stillness that defines this ancient partnership. As you watch the falcon glide effortlessly through the sky, your breath slows and deepens, and your thoughts begin to soften, drawn into the tranquil rhythm of the bird's flight. The woodland around you stirs with life, the gentle rustling of leaves in the breeze, the distant sound of a babbling brook, the soft songs of early morning birds greeting the day. Each sound blends into a peaceful symphony, a soundtrack of nature's quiet song that calms the mind and invites rest. The falcon's elegant flight, its wings slicing through the cool morning air, reminds you of the beauty of freedom and trust, the silent bond that exists between the falconer and the bird, a partnership built on patience, respect, and shared moments of stillness. As the bird returns to the falconer's outstretched arm, landing softly with practiced ease, the moment feels like a quiet celebration of that bond, a tender acknowledgement of the trust and companionship that have endured through countless mornings spent beneath the open sky. The falconer's hand moves gently along the bird's feathers, offering a soft stroke, a quiet promise of care and companionship that will continue through the day and beyond, a silent communication that needs no words. The forest around them seems to breathe in unison with their movements, the cool morning air flowing gently through the trees, carrying the scents of pine and damp earth, inviting you to take a deep, soothing breath and relax even further. As the woodland begins to awaken, the sun climbs higher in the sky, casting longer shadows across the forest floor, the delicate balance of light and shadow shifting with the rhythm of the day. You feel yourself sinking deeper into the peaceful presence of the forest, your heart calm, your breath steady, and your mind clear, each moment drawing you closer to the tranquil embrace of nature's quiet magic. The falconer and his companion stand together, a quiet pair beneath the canopy of trees, as the world continues to unfold in its steady rhythm around them. The falcon's wings rustle softly as it settles back on the falconer's gloved hand, and the forest around them, filled with the sounds of life, becomes a comforting cocoon, wrapping you gently in its embrace. The rhythms of the woodland, the flow of the wind, the rustle of leaves, the soft chorus of birdsong all combine to form a gentle lullaby, a soothing melody that calms the mind and invites the body to relax fully. As the falcon settles into rest, the falconer stands still, honoring the quiet moments that pass, knowing that these shared moments of stillness, trust, and companionship are what sustain the deep connection between them, and what bring peace and comfort to your own heart. The peaceful serenity of this morning, the steady rhythm of the falcon's flight, and the timeless presence of the woodland will stay with you, carrying you forward into a day filled with gentle stillness, trust, and the comforting embrace of nature. Asterisk as the morning light intensifies, casting a golden hue across the forest floor. The falconer and his companion move deeper into the heart of the woodland, their steady steps quiet on the mossy path that winds its way between ancient trees. The air is fresh and filled with the earthy sense of pine, damp earth, and the delicate fragrance of wildflowers in bloom, inviting deep, slow breaths that soothe the mind and relax the body. The falcon, perched securely on the falconer's gloved hand, stretches its wings once more, the soft rustling of feathers a testament to the bird's grace and power. With every gentle flex, the falcon's plumage shimmers in the light, iridescent hues of bronze and gold dancing like living fire beneath the sun's rays, a silent reminder of the elegance and strength that resides within its form. The falconer's hand remains steady, his movements calm and deliberate, each action reflecting the deep bond between man and bird, forged through countless shared moments beneath the open sky. His eyes meet the falcon's keen gaze, both understanding without words, the silent communication of trust and companionship that flows between them. He carefully checks the leather jesses, ensuring they are secure but comfortable, allowing the bird freedom to move and fly, yet keeping the delicate connection intact. The falconer nods, a subtle signal, and with powerful, rhythmic wing beats the falcon takes to the sky once again, its wings cutting through the cool morning air with practiced precision. As the bird ascends, soaring higher above the treetops, it seems to become one with the sky, the winds embracing it as it glides effortlessly through the air. The falcon's sharp eyes scan the landscape below, its instinctual gaze trained to detect even the faintest movement among the underbrush, a flicker of fur, a rustle of leaves, the slightest signs of life that could be a meal or a challenge. The falconer stands still, his eyes following the bird's flight, a quiet celebration unfolding between them, a silent acknowledgement of the years of training, patience, and shared experiences that have brought them to this moment. The forest, too, seems to celebrate the rustling leaves, the chirping of birds, and the distant murmur of a babbling stream, all blending into a peaceful symphony that fills the air with calm. The falcon circles wide above, its wings outstretched, slicing through invisible currents with effortless grace, each beat a symbol of freedom, power, and precision. Watching the bird, the falconer's breath slows, syncing with the bird's flight, his heart calm and steady, each inhale and exhale a part of the quiet rhythm of the forest around him. Below, the woodland seems to come alive with a gentle energy, the trees swaying softly in the breeze, their ancient trunks bearing witness to the timeless dance between man, bird, and nature. The falcon's keen eyes remain sharp, searching, scanning the forest floor for any signs of movement, its body instinctively following the natural rhythm of the world, a perfect embodiment of the wild's grace and intelligence. As the falcon begins its descent, its wings folding gently to its sides, it lands lightly on the falconer's outstretched arm, a perfect return to the quiet partnership they share. The falconer's hand, steady and practiced, cradles the bird, day with reverence, a tender touch that speaks volumes of the deep trust between them. His fingers brush against the bird's feathers, each stroke a quiet promise of care and protection, a bond that remains unspoken but felt in every shared glance, every flight, every pause in the rhythm of the forest. The woodland around them continues its symphony, a gentle chorus of sounds, the rustling of leaves, the soft calls of distant birds, the whisper of the wind creating a peaceful backdrop for the quiet celebration taking place between man and bird. The falconer's heart swells with gratitude, knowing that this bond, this silent understanding, is something that transcends words. It is a bond that exists between them and the natural world they inhabit. In this moment, there is no rush, no need for words. There is only the stillness of the forest, the quiet celebration of trust, and the profound connection shared beneath the vast sky. The falconer looks up, his gaze meeting the calm, watchful eyes of the bird, and for a moment, the entire world seems to pause, the rhythmic flow of time becoming still. The sun, climbing higher in the sky, bathes the forest in its warm light, casting long shadows across the moss-covered ground, as if the earth itself is honoring this quiet celebration. The falconer stands tall, the falcon perched confidently. On his arm, a living symbol of the trust, care, and respect that binds them together. The woodland, too, celebrates this moment, the soft murmur of the brook, the rustle of the leaves, the distant calls of the birds all blending into a lullaby that cradles the spirit, reminding all who are present at these moments of connection, these quiet celebrations of trust and companionship are the true treasures of the world. As the falconer stands there, his heart calm and his spirit at peace, the bird remains on his arm, its sharp eyes scanning the world around them, ready to take flight again when the time comes, when the rhythm of the forest calls them onward. For now, they are at rest, celebrating the stillness, the bond, and the quiet understanding that exists between them, beneath the canopy of ancient trees. The forest, bathed in the early morning light, continues to hum with the quiet energy of life, as the falconer prepares for yet another sacred moment shared with his companion. The falcon perched confidently on the falconer's arm gazes out, across the woodland, its keen eyes searching the landscape below with a sharpness that only comes from years of instinct and training. The falconer's fingers, steady and practiced, adjust the leather jesses and reins, making sure they are secure, but not too tight, ensuring that the bird can move with freedom, yet remain connected to him in the delicate balance they share. With a slow, deliberate movement, the falconer shifts his weight, signaling to the bird that the time for flight is near. The air is crisp and fresh, filled with the earthy scents of pine, damp leaves, and the subtle fragrance of morning blossoms. Each breath that the falconer takes is slow and deliberate, syncing with the rhythm of the forest. As the bond between him and the falcon deepens with every passing moment, as the falconer's gaze meets the bird's, a silent understanding passes between them, one forged through countless hours spent in the quiet company of the woods. Each training session, each flight, a step closer to this profound connection. The forest seems to hold its breath, waiting for the ritual to unfold. Ka! The falconer offers a soft, silent nod, and with that simple gesture, the falcon takes off, launching into the cool morning air with powerful, rhythmic wing beats. The sound of feathers cutting through the air fills the space around them, and set for a moment. The world is hushed, as if nature itself is watching this ancient partnership unfold. The falcon's wings beat in perfect harmony with the pulse of the forest, its body soaring higher and higher, carried effortlessly by the invisible currents that weave through the canopy of trees. The falcon's sharp eyes scan the ground below, searching for the slightest hint of movement, a flicker of life that could signify a meal, or perhaps an opportunity to practice the skills it has honed over many years. The falconer watches as his companion ascends into the sky, his heart steady, his breath slow and even, his spirit attuned to the delicate flow of energy between him and the bird. The bond they share is palpable, felt in every movement, in the silent communication that passes between them without words. As the falcon circles above, the falconer's thoughts wander briefly, remembering the first day they met, the first time the bird perched on his gloved hand, its talons tentative, its gaze curious but unsure. Over time, trust had been built, layer by layer, like the steady growth of the trees around them, as both man and bird learned the rhythms of each other's presence. Now, the falconer knows the bird with a depth that goes beyond sight and sound, understanding its every subtle movement, every shift in its posture, every flicker of its gaze. They have become as one in their shared purpose, their shared ritual. The falconer's mind returns to the present as he watches the bird soar higher, its wings beating steadily in time with the natural flow of the forest. Below, the woodland stirs to life as the birds of the trees begin their own chorus. The leaves rustle gently in the breeze, and the distant murmur of the brook provides a soothing backdrop to the ritual unfolding above. The falcon, now circling wide, its sharp eyes alert to the slightest movement on the forest floor, dives down swiftly, its wings folding neatly to its sides as it closes the distance between itself and the ground. It is a display of grace and power, a reminder of the ancient art of falconry that has been passed down through the generations, from one set of hands to another, from one bird to the next. The falconer, ever watchful, is ready, his arm outstretched, waiting for the bird's return. The moment feels like an eternity, suspended in the stillness of the forest, as the falcon makes its descent, a living arrow, a perfect embodiment of freedom and precision. The bird lands softly on the falconer's arm, its talons making gentle contact with the leather glove. The falconer's hand, steady and practiced, supports the bird with quiet reverence. A moment of connection that speaks volumes of the trust, care that have been built between them. He offers a tender stroke along the bird's feathers, his touch a silent promise of protection and companionship, a bond that will endure through the changing seasons. The woodland, ever present, continues its symphony around them, the sounds of the morning blending into the background of this sacred moment. The falconer takes a slow, deep breath, feeling the calm settle over him, his heart in sync with the rhythm of the forest. The ritual of the flight, of trust and freedom, has been completed once again, and the bond between him and his companion grows deeper with each passing day. As the falcon rests on his arm, the forest continues to breathe around them, the world moving in a slow, peaceful rhythm. The falconer stands still, his gaze shifting upward to the canopy above, his thoughts lingering in the quiet space between bird and the forest. The ritual has been completed, but the journey, both for the falconer and his companion, continues. There is always more to learn, more to discover in the quiet moments shared beneath the vast sky. And as they stand together, the falconer and the falcon, they are ready for whatever the next moment in their shared journey will bring. As the sun sinks lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the forest floor, the falconer finds himself once again drawn into the quiet rhythm of the woodland, his steps slow and deliberate, the weight of the day lifting as he walks deeper into the embrace of nature. The falcon, ever watchful, rests quietly on his gloved arm, its sharp eyes surveying the surroundings with a quiet intensity, always alert, always aware of the world around it. The forest, with its ancient trees and rustling leaves, seems to breathe in unison with the falcon and its keeper, a symbiotic relationship that has existed for as long as the woods themselves. The falconer pauses for a moment, taking in the sounds of the evening, the soft chirping of crickets, the distant hoot of an owl, the wind weaving through the branches above. There is peace here, a peace that can only be found in the wilds, where time moves slowly and the land holds memories of all those who have walked its paths before. Key gently strokes the falcon's feathers, his hand steady and sure, as if reaffirming the silent promise they have made to each other, a promise of trust, of care, of shared moments beneath the open sky. There is no need for words between them. Their bond speaks through the subtle movements of the bird's talons, the quiet gaze exchanged between man and creature, the rhythm of their breaths, synchronized in the calm of the woodland night. The falconer feels a deep sense of gratitude for this connection, for the quiet moments spent in the presence of such a magnificent creature. The falcon, once a wild being of the skies, has become a companion, a partner in the ancient art of falconry. Their relationship is one of mutual respect, built on patience and understanding, forged through countless hours of shared silence and fleeting moments of flight. The falconer looks down at the bird, his gaze filled with affection, and with a subtle nod he signals to the falcon, the unspoken communication between them clear. The bird, sensing the shift in energy, prepares itself, ruffling its feathers, in readiness, its sharp eyes glinting in the soft light of the setting sun. With a quiet movement, the falconer releases the bird, and the falcon takes off into the cool evening air, its wings cutting through the sky with a rhythmic grace, rising higher and higher, carried by the invisible currents that weave through the treetops. The falconer watches as his companion disappears into the distance, his heart steady, his mind calm. There is a deep satisfaction in watching the bird soar, a feeling that transcends words, a sense of fulfillment that comes from knowing that their partnership has reached a new level of understanding. The falcon is free in the sky, and yet it remains connected to the falconer, bound by a bond that cannot be broken, a bond that transcends the physical world and exists in the space between them. The forest below seems to hold its breath, as if acknowledging the sacredness of the moment. The falcon, now high above the treetops, surveys the landscape with a keen eye, always alert, always ready to act. It moves effortlessly through the air, a living embodiment of grace and power, a creature perfectly in tune with its surroundings. The falconer, standing below, follows its flight with his gaze, his thoughts quiet and focused. He has come to know this bird in a way that goes beyond understanding. He knows its movements, its pauses, its subtle shifts in posture, and in turn, the falcon knows him. It is a sacred connection, one that has been forged over time, built on trust and patience, and it is a bond that will endure. As the falcon circles high above, the falconer remains still, his arm extended, waiting for the moment when the bird will return. The trust between them is complete. The falcon knows that it can fly freely, and the falconer knows that it will return when the time is right. The forest continues its symphony around them, the rustling of leaves, the distant calls of birds settling in for the night, the soft murmur of the brook nearby. The wind picks up, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth, and for a moment it feels as though the entire world is holding its breath, waiting for the falcon's descent. And then, with the slightest flicker of movement, the falcon begins its descent, its wings folding in close to its body as it dives toward the falconer. The bird's graceful arc through the air is a testament to the bond they share, a living dance of trust and understanding. With practiced ease, the falcon lands softly on the falconer's arm, its talons making gentle contact with the leather glove, a perfect, seamless return to its partner. The falconer's hand is steady, his touch gentle as he strokes the bird's feathers, offering silent gratitude for the trust it has shown him. The bird, having completed its flight, ruffles its feathers and settles in, its sharp eyes still scanning the surroundings, ever alert, always watchful. The falconer stands still, for a moment, feeling the weight of the bird on his arm, the quiet presence of the creature in the fading light. There is a profound sense of peace in this moment, a quiet stillness that speaks of years of shared journeys, of mutual respect, and of a bond that has been nurtured in the quiet spaces between words. The falconer takes a deep breath, feeling the cool evening air fill his lungs, and for a moment he allows himself to simply be present in this space, in this time, with the falcon and the forest around him. He knows that tomorrow will bring another flight, another ritual, another moment to deepen the connection they share. But for now, there is only this moment of quiet, sacred peace. The falcon, perched calmly on his arm, the forest around fend, them, the gentle fading light of the day. It is enough. And with that, the falconer turns, and together they walk back toward the heart of the forest, the path ahead lit by the soft glow of the twilight. As the first rays of the sun begin to break through the canopy, painting the forest floor with soft, golden hues, the falconer prepares for another day in the wild sanctuary of the forest. The air is crisp and fresh, filled with the earthy scent of pine and damp moss, a scent that carries the promise of a new adventure. His eyes follow the distant silhouette of the falcon perched on a nearby branch, its sleek body illuminated by the rising sun, its sharp eyes scanning the horizon with instinctual precision. The falcon, having spent countless hours soaring through the open sky, is a creature of freedom, its every movement a testament to the boundless spirit that runs through its wings. The falconer, though grounded, shares in that freedom, his own spirit soaring alongside the bird as they embark on their daily ritual. There is a quiet understanding between them, a connection forged in the silent spaces of the forest, where words are unnecessary, and trust speaks louder than any command. The falconer adjusts the leather straps on his glove, his movements slow and deliberate, as if honoring the bird's wild nature while also embracing the delicate balance of their partnership. He knows that in this moment he is not merely a caretaker, but a participant in a greater rhythm, one that is as old as the forest itself. With a final glance at the falconer gives a subtle nod, and with that the bird takes flight, its wings cutting through the cool morning air with effortless grace. The falcon's ascent is a thing of beauty, a living embodiment of freedom. As it rises higher and higher, weaving through the branches, its sharp eyes scanning the ground below for any sign of movement. The falconer watches intently, his breath steady as he observes the bird's every maneuver, its wings slicing through the air with rhythmic precision. There is a quiet joy in watching the falcon soar, knowing that it is in its element, doing what it was born to do, to be free, to fly. The falcon, ever watchful, circles high above the treetops, its keen eyes catching every detail of the forest below. It is a master of the skies, its movements fluid and effortless, a creature at one with the wind and the currents that carry it higher. For a moment, the falconer feels a pang of longing, a desire to join the bird in its flight, to feel the wind in his own hair and the world below him receding into nothingness. Schematic. But then he reminds himself that his place is here, on the ground, watching over the falcon, guiding it with silent understanding. Their bond is not one of ownership, but of mutual respect. The falcon is not a pet, but a companion, a fellow traveler on a journey that transcends the physical world. As the falcon soars above, the forest below comes to life with the sounds of the morning, the chirping of birds, the rustling of leaves, the soft murmur of the nearby stream. The woodland awakens in a symphony of sound, a soundtrack that accompanies the falcon's flight, a reminder that this world is vast and full of possibilities. The falcon circles once more, its wings beating steadily, before it begins its descent, its sharp eyes focused on the falconer below. The moment of return is always the same, the silent communication between them clear and unwavering. As the falcon nears the falconer, the bird folds its wings gracefully and lands softly on his arm, its talons making contact with the leather glove with a gentle, practiced motion. The connection between them is instantaneous, the bird's presence grounding the falconer in a moment of peace and quiet triumph. The falconer's hand is steady as he strokes the bird's feathers, his fingers running along the sleek plumage with reverence. It is a gesture of gratitude, a silent acknowledgement of the bird's freedom and strength. The falcon, in turn, settles into the familiar rhythm of its keeper's touch, its body relaxing under the soft pressure of his hand. There is a sacredness in these moments, a quiet celebration of the bond they share. It is a bond that has been nurtured over time, built on trust, patience, and the shared understanding that freedom is not something that can be possessed, but something that is given and received in return. The falconer stands still, allowing the bird to rest, his eyes closed for a moment as he takes in the serenity of the forest around him. The wind picks up, rustling the leaves of the trees above, and for a fleeting moment the falconer feels as though he is part of the very fabric of the woodland itself, woven into its rhythms, its pulse. The falcon, perched calmly on his arm, becomes an extension of that feeling, a symbol of the untamed beauty of nature and the quiet harmony that can exist between man and beast. After a moment of stillness, the falconer begins to walk again, bird, remaining perched on his arm, its keen eyes still scanning the forest with a quiet alertness. As they move deeper into the woods, the falconer feels a sense of peace settle over him, the kind of peace that can only be found in nature, where time slows and the mind is free to simply be. There is no need for anything more in this moment. No rush, no worries, just the quiet companionship of the bird and the forest. Together they walk in silence, the falconer and the falcon. Two beings bound by a shared journey, each fulfilling its role in the eternal dance of the natural world. The morning continues to unfold around them, the soft light of dawn giving way to the full brilliance of the day. The forest, once again alive with the sounds of nature, becomes a sanctuary for both of them, a place where they can be free, where they can breathe, where they can simply exist in the present. And so, as the falconer and the falcon continue their walk through the woods, they move together in perfect harmony, the flight of freedom continuing above them, and the bond between them growing stronger with each passing moment. The silence of the woods envelops the falconer and his bird as they continue their journey deeper into the heart of the ancient forest. The trees stand like sentinels, their gnarled branches reaching toward the sky, each one a testament to the passage of time and the stories they hold within their bark. The air is thick with the scent of pine, damp earth, and the distant hint of wildflowers that bloom in secret glades, untouched by the world beyond. Each step the falconer takes is measured and deliberate, his boots pressing softly into the rich, spongy moss that blankets the forest floor, creating a soft, whispering rhythm that merges with the quiet hum of the woodland around him. The bird, perched silently on his arm, remains as still as the world itself, its feathers blending seamlessly with the shadow of the trees, its eyes sharp and ever watchful. The falconer, lost in the moment, lets his senses absorb the deep stillness of forest. There is no hurry, no rush, only the steady pulse of life around him, the rustling of leaves as a gentle breeze stirs them, the faint calls of distant birds, the soft murmur of the creek winding its way through the undergrowth. In this sacred space, the falconer feels as though time itself has slowed to match the pace of the woods. There is a profound peace here, a stillness that settles in the bones and quiets the mind. It is as if the forest, with its ancient wisdom, care, has long understood the need for moments like these, where the world outside fades into nothingness, and only the present moment remains. The falconer and the falcon move through this living cathedral, each step taken in harmony with the rhythms of nature. The forest seems to breathe with them, its pulse aligned with theirs. The steady beat of life echoed in the quiet rustle of leaves and the soft flutter of the bird's wings. The connection between them is palpable, a silent bond that needs no words. The falconer and the falcon are not separate entities in this moment, but are part of a larger whole, an intricate dance that has been performed for centuries, long before either of them arrived in the woods. There is a sense of belonging here, an understanding that both the falcon and the falconer are bound to this place, their spirits intertwined with the ancient pulse of the forest. As they walk, the falconer's gaze drifts upward, his eyes tracing the path of a hawk circling high above the canopy. The bird's movements are fluid, graceful, a master of the sky. The falconer cannot help but admire the effortless way it soars, the wind carrying it higher with each beat of its wings, and for a moment he imagines himself taking flight, feeling the cool air rushing past him as he rises into the sky. But the falconer knows that his place is on the ground, in the forest, where the earth meets the sky and where the bond between him and the falcon is most sacred. His role is not to fly, but to watch over the bird, to guide it through the world with patience and care. It is a delicate balance, one that requires trust and respect for the wild nature of the falcon, and a deep understanding that freedom is not something to be owned, but something to be shared. The silence of the woods deepens as the falconer and the falcon continue their journey, their presence almost unnoticed among the trees. The air grows cooler as they move further into the heart of the forest, the shadows lengthening with the approach of evening. The falconer adjusts the bird's jesses with a careful, practiced touch, ensuring that the leather straps are secure but not too tight, allowing the falcon to move freely while still remaining connected to him. The bond between them is built on these small, thoughtful gestures, on the moments of care that go unnoticed by the world but are deeply significant in the relationship they share. As the falconer walks, his thoughts drift to the past, to the years spent in this forest, learning the rhythms of the land and the creatures that inhabit it. He recalls the first time he met the falcon, a young bird, wild and untamed, its feathers soft and new. It had been a hesitant meeting, the bird unsure of its keeper, and the falconer, in turn, unsure of how to build the trust that would eventually form the foundation of their relationship. But over time, the bond had grown stronger, forged in the quiet spaces between the falconer's careful training and the bird's natural instincts. Now, they move as one, their steps in sync, their hearts beating to the same rhythm. As the forest deepens into dusk, the sounds of the woodland shift. The birds' songs grow quieter, and the air becomes thicker with the scent of evening dew. The falconer feels the weight of the night approaching, the soft coolness that accompanies the setting sun. He stops for a moment, allowing the silence to wash over him. The world around him seems to hold its breath, as if waiting for something. A shift in the air, the call of a distant owl, or the rustle of the trees as they settle into the night. In this stillness, the falconer feels a deep sense of peace. He knows that the world is always moving, always changing, but in this moment, the forest remains the same. The falconer's hand rests lightly on the bird's feathers, and he looks out over the woods, feeling a deep sense of belonging. This forest, this place, is his home. The journey they have taken together through the highs and lows of the seasons, through the quiet moments and the wild, exhilarating flights, has brought them to this point, to this place of deep understanding. As the last light of day fades and the stars begin to twinkle above, the falconer takes a slow, steady breath, feeling the night settle around him. He knows that tomorrow will bring another day of flight, another day of quiet companionship, but for now there is only the silence of the woods, the soft rustle of the leaves, and the quiet comfort of knowing that, in this moment, all is as it should be. The air is thick with the promise of rain, and the falconer senses the change before it comes. The sky above has shifted from the serene blue of midday to a murky gray, the clouds gathering in a slow, determined march across the heavens. The once peaceful stillness of the forest now seems to vibrate with the anticipation of the storm, each gust of wind carrying with it a hint of the coming downpour. The falcon, perched on the falconer's arm, shifts restlessly, its feathers ruffling slightly as the wind begins to pick up, and its sharp eyes scan the sky with the same instinctive wariness that the falconer feels in his bones. This is no ordinary storm. There is a weight to the air, a pressure that builds like a drumbeat in the distance, reminding them both of nature's raw power. The falconer adjusts his grip on the bird's jesses, his hands steady but quick, his movements precise. Over the years, he has learned to read the language of the forest, its whispers, its rustlings, its shifts in the wind, and he knows that this storm is not one to be taken lightly. He knows that the forest will change in its wake, the air will be different, and the very rhythm of the land will shift as the rain comes and goes. The falcon, still perched on his arm, seems to sense this as well. Its keen eyes follow the changing sky, its wings twitching slightly as if ready to take flight at a moment's notice. But the falconer holds it firmly, keeping it grounded for now. There is no need for panic, no need for flight just yet. But the falconer knows that he must be ready. The storm is coming, and there is little time to waste. As the first drop of rain falls from the sky, the falconer looks up, his face briefly illuminated by the soft gray light before it is swallowed by the clouds. The sky, once so peaceful, is now churning with clouds that gather in heavy, undulating masses above. The wind picks up, swirling around him in gusts, tugging at the hem of his cloak, sending the leaves into a wild dance, and shaking the branches of the trees. The bird, still perched calmly on his arm, appears unfazed, as if it has weathered many storms like this before, and perhaps it has. But the falconer, too, has learned the ways of the forest. He knows that in times like these, patience is key. The storm will pass as quickly as it arrived, and the land will settle once more. The falconer's hand rests on the bird's feathers, offering a silent promise of safety and calm in the midst of the rising chaos around them. There is something strangely comforting in the storm's approach, a reminder that the world is alive, that nature is never still, that there is a constant ebb and flow to the land, the air, and the sky. The falconer feels his own breath slow, his thoughts quieting in the face of the storm, and he is at peace. The falcon, ever watchful, settles itself more comfortably on his arm, its sharp eyes darting from side to side as if keeping track of every movement in the forest. The rain begins in earnest, falling in heavy, rhythmic sheets, a steady drumbeat that fills the air with the sound of its arrival. The falconer, feeling the first wet droplets against his skin, pulls his cloak tighter around himself. But he does not move to seek shelter. There is no need to rush. He knows that the forest has its own rhythm in times like this, its own tempo that will guide him through the storm. And the bird, too, knows. Together, they are one with the forest, standing firm as the wind howls and the rain lashes against the earth. As the storm intensifies, the falconer stands still, feeling the wet earth beneath his feet and the cold rain soaking through his cloak. But he does not flinch. The falcon, too, remains steady, its wings tucked tightly against its body, its eyes unwavering as it surveys the surrounding world. In this moment, there is no fear, only a deep, abiding connection to the land that sustains them both. The storm may rage around them, but they are steadfast, rooted in their bond with the forest and with each other. The storm continues to roar overhead, but the falconer is no longer bothered by it. He knows the forest will always endure, that the rain will eventually pass, that the sun will shine once more. The storm, as fierce and unrelenting as it is, will eventually fade into memory. In its wake, the forest will breathe a sigh of relief, and the air will be clean and crisp once more. The falconer looks up again as the storm rages, his gaze meeting the wild sky above, and for a brief moment he feels the enormity of it, all the land, the wind, the rain, the trees, the birds, and himself. All of it together as one. There is a deep peace in that realization, a calm that settles within his chest and radiates outward into every fiber of his being. He takes a deep breath, allowing the cool, rain-soaked air to fill his lungs, and in that moment he feels more alive than ever before. Storm, in all its fury, has brought him closer to the forest, to the bird, and to the wild, untamed beauty of the world around him. As the rain begins to let up, the falconer feels the tension in the air begin to lift, the wind dying down, this storm's fury gradually waning as if it has spent itself. The falconer relaxes his grip on the bird's jesses and watches as the bird lifts its head, its eyes scanning the sky. The storm is over, and the forest begins to quiet once more. The falconer and the bird stand together, side by side, watching the last of the storm clouds dissipate in the distance. The world is calm again, and as the rain fades, a gentle breeze begins to stir the leaves once more. In the fading light of the storm, the falconer feels the peace of the forest settle over him, a quiet reminder of the strength and resilience of the land, and of the quiet connection he shares with the bird that has been his companion through so many storms. The forest, still wet from the storm, now stands in serene silence, a delicate mist rising from the earth, clinging to the trees and ferns, as though nature itself is taking a deep, slow breath, savoring the freshness that follows a storm. The falconer stands motionless, his senses alert as the light of the early morning dawns softly across the woodland. The birds, once hidden in the shadows of the storm, begin to sing again, their songs tentative at first, but growing stronger, close. With each passing moment, the rain has washed the air clean, and the faint scent of damp earth and pine needles fills the falconer's lungs with each steady breath he takes. He feels connected to the land, as though the forest is breathing alongside him, its rhythms aligning with his own, a soft pulse that beats quietly in the deep of the woods. The falcon on his arm shifts slightly, its sharp eyes scanning the landscape, a stillness in its posture that mirrors the falconer's own calm. The bond between them, unspoken but understood, is as steady and unwavering as the trees around them, rooted deep in the earth, connected to the sky above. The falconer adjusts his grip on the bird's jesses, his touch light and practiced, a careful balance between control and freedom. He feels the bird's muscles tense beneath its feathers, ready to spring into flight at a moment's notice. The falcon knows the forest as well as the falconer does, its instincts honed by years. A flight through these very woods, there is a silent understanding between them, a partnership forged not in words, but in the shared rhythms of life in the wild. As the falconer stands there, waiting for the world to awaken fully, he is reminded of the delicate balance that exists in nature, where every moment is a fleeting thing, passing from one to the next with quiet grace. The world is constantly changing, yet some things remain the same: the deep roots of the trees, the quiet flow of the river, the trust between man and bird. The forest is alive with these rhythms, its timeless dance unfolding with each passing day. The light from the rising sun begins to warm the falconer's back, casting long, soft shadows across the forest floor. The mist, once thick and heavy, begins to dissipate, rising higher into the branches where it is absorbed into the air, leaving behind the fresh, clean scent of a world reborn. The falconer feels the cool breeze on his face, carrying with it the promise of a new day. The storm, though fierce in its moment, is now nothing more than a distant memory, a passing disturbance in the natural order. What remains is the peace that follows, the stillness that settles over the land as the world begins to wake from its slumber. The falconer knows that soon the forest will be alive with activity again, the scurrying of animals in the underbrush, the soft rustle of leaves as the wind stirs the branches, the distant calls of the birds as they begin their daily songs. But for now, there is only the quiet, the calm before the dawn. He looks down at the bird on his arm, its feathers glistening with droplets of rain, its eyes sharp and watchful, ever alert to the world around it. The falconer feels a deep sense of gratitude in this moment for the partnership they share, for the trust that has been built between them over years of training and companionship. It is a bond forged not in words, but in action, in the shared experience of the wild. And as the falconer watches the first rays of sunlight filter through the trees, he knows that this is a moment to savor, a moment of peace in a world that is always in motion, always changing. The falconer has learned to appreciate these moments, coat of stillness, for they are rare and fleeting, like the quiet before a storm, or the soft silence of the early morning before the world fully awakens. In this silence, he finds a deep sense of connection to the land, to the bird, and to himself. The falconer stands tall, breathing in the clean, cool air, feeling the weight of the world lift from his shoulders. He is one with the forest, with the bird, with the land. And as the first rays of sunlight touch the forest floor, he feels a sense of calm wash over him, a deep peace that comes from knowing that in this moment all is as it should be. There are no distractions, no worries, no rushing. There is only the quiet, the stillness, and the trust between him and the falcon. The world will soon come alive, but for now they remain suspended in time. Two figures in a quiet, tranquil world, connected to each other and to the land. The falconer smiles to himself, a quiet acknowledgement of the beauty of this moment, this stillness that surrounds him, and as the light of the new day spills fully into the forest, he knows that it is time to move forward, to take the next step in their journey together. But for now, he will savor this moment, for in the quiet before the dawn, there is peace. The forest has awakened, and so, too, has the falconer, and together they will face whatever comes next. The morning sun climbs steadily into the sky, its rays breaking through the thick canopy of trees, casting a warm golden glow across the forest floor. The falconer stands at the edge of the woodland clearing, his gaze fixed on the horizon as day. The light of day pours over the land, bathing everything in its soft, reassuring warmth. Day is crisp, tinged with the earthy scent of moss and damp earth, and the faint fragrance of wildflowers mingles with the rich aroma of pine resin. The world is alive with sound, the soft chirping of birds greeting the dawn, the rustling of leaves stirred by a gentle breeze, and the distant murmur of a stream winding its way through the forest. The falconer takes a deep breath, his chest expanding as he inhales the fresh morning air. There is a sense of renewal in the air, a promise of a new beginning with each passing day. His eyes move down to the bird perched upon his arm, the falcon, now fully awake, its feathers shimmering with the golden light of the morning. Its keen eyes are alert, scanning the surrounding woods with sharp precision. Systematic, the falcon's body is still, but there is an unmistakable tension in its muscles, the quiet readiness of an animal attuned to the world around it. The bond between the falconer and the bird is undeniable, an unspoken understanding forged over years of companionship. They have shared countless mornings like this one, each one a quiet celebration of their partnership, a dance of trust and patience that exists in the silence between them. As the falconer gently strokes the bird's feathers, he feels a sense of pride in the bond they share. The bird responds to his touch with a soft movement, its muscles relaxing under his hand. It is a moment of connection, a reminder of the years spent together, training, learning, and growing as one. The falconer's heart swells with a quiet joy, the simple act of caring for the bird, filling him with a deep sense of fulfillment. He knows that this is a bond that cannot be broken, a trust built on the shared experiences of the wild, where words are unnecessary, and actions speak louder than any promise. The falconer lifts his arms slightly, signaling to the bird. With a powerful flap of its wings, the falcon takes flight, soaring high into the sky, its wings cutting through the air with effortless grace. The falconer watches as the bird climbs higher, its silhouette against the rising sun, a symbol of freedom and grace. For a moment, everything else fades away, their worries, the distractions, the noise of the world, and all that remains is the bird and the falconer, the two of them together in this quiet, sacred space. The falcon's flight is a thing of beauty, a dance of wings and wind, an expression of the freedom that exists in the wild. It is a reminder of the power of nature, of the delicate balance between predator and prey, between the hunter and the hunted. The falconer's gaze follows the bird's flight as it circles high above the trees, its sharp eyes scanning the ground below, ever watchful for any signs of movement. He feels a deep sense of admiration for the bird, for its strength, its precision, and its ability to soar so effortlessly through the air. The forest below seems to pause, as if holding its breath, waiting for the falcon to return. The falconer watches with a quiet sense of anticipation, knowing that soon the bird will come back to him, its journey complete, its purpose fulfilled. The morning air is still, the quiet broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves and the distant calls of other birds. The falconer's mind drifts as he waits, his thoughts returning to the bond he shares with the bird, to the years of training and companionship that have led them to this moment. There is a quiet satisfaction in knowing that they have both come so far, that they are no longer two separate beings, but two parts of a whole, working together in perfect harmony. Falcon returns, its wings spread wide as it descends gracefully back toward the falconer. It lands with practiced ease, settling on his outstretched arm, its talons gripping the leather jesses securely. The falconer smiles softly, his heart soul swelling with pride once again. The bird is calm, its chest rising and falling with each steady breath. The falconer's fingers gently stroke the bird's feathers once more, a quiet gesture of affection and gratitude. The bird responds with a soft ruffle of its feathers, a silent acknowledgement of their connection. The moment feels timeless, as if the forest itself has held its breath, waiting for this quiet exchange between man and bird. The falconer stands there for a long while, his hand resting on the bird's back, listening to the sounds of the forest around him. The world is still, and yet, in this stillness, there is a sense of peace that settles over him, a deep contentment that comes from knowing that everything is as it should be. The sun continues to climb higher, the light growing warmer as the day unfolds. The forest comes alive again, the sounds of the world slowly returning to their familiar rhythm. The falconer knows that the day ahead will be full of challenges, of moments that will test his patience and his bond with the bird. But, for now, he is content to stand in the quiet of the morning, knowing that this moment, this shared stillness between him and the falcon, is enough. It is a reminder of the strength that comes from connection, from the quiet moments of trust and understanding that shape the world around them. The falconer turns his gaze back to the horizon, watching as the sun rises higher into the sky. There is a sense of renewal in the air, a promise that each new day brings with it the potential for growth, for change, for new beginnings. And in this moment, as the falconer stands with his bird, he knows that whatever the day brings, they will face it together. The sun hangs low in the sky, casting long shadows across the dense forest as the falconer moves deeper into the woods, his steps careful but purposeful. The air has a cool, crisp quality to it, with the faintest hint of autumn settling in, a sign of the changing seasons. The earth beneath his boots is soft and damp, the moss-covered stones and scattered leaves muffling his movements. Every so often, a rustle can be heard, a distant snap of twigs as the wildlife stirs in the underbrush. But the falconer remains still, his senses tuned to the rhythm of the forest. His eyes flicker to the falcon perched on his arm, its feathers ruffled by the gentle wind. The bird is calm, but there is a quiet intensity in its posture, its gaze fixed ahead, alert to the slightest movement in the air or on the ground. The falconer knows this is a moment of preparation, a time for both of them to ready themselves for the hunt. The forest is silent except for the sounds of nature, a soft whisper of leaves and the occasional bird call breaking the stillness. It is during moments like these that the bond between the falconer and the bird becomes most evident. Their movements are in sync, their connection palpable in the quiet moments between them. The falconer adjusts the leather jesses around the bird's legs, his fingers working with practiced ease. The bird shifts slightly, but remains still, trusting the falconer's touch. The falconer's gaze never wavers from the horizon, his mind focused on what lies ahead. He knows the land, knows the signs of the animals that inhabit it. He knows when to move and when to wait. Patience is key in the hunt, and it's something he has learned well over the years. As the falconer stands there waiting, the forest seems to hold its breath. It is a time of stillness, of preparation. And then, the moment comes. The falconer gives a subtle nod, a signal to the bird, and in an instant, the falcon spreads its wings and launches into the air. tet. The bird rises quickly, cutting through the cool air with effortless grace. Its powerful wings beat rhythmically, the muscles of its body honed by years of flight and training. The falconer watches as the bird ascends, his heart beating in sync, with the falcon's wings. The hunt is on. As the falcon soars higher, the falconer moves quietly through the forest, his eyes scanning the ground, his ears attuned to the sounds of the forest. Every now and then, he glances up at the bird, following its path as it circles above, its keen eyes searching for any sign of movement below. The falconer knows that this part of the hunt requires both patience and precision. It's not about crushing, but about waiting for the right moment, when the bird has spotted its prey and is ready to strike. Time seems to slow as the falcon circles overhead, its eyes scanning the ground with sharp focus. The falconer's breath is steady, his movements deliberate as he watches the bird's every move. And then, suddenly, the bird dives. It's a swift and calculated move, a blur of feathers and speed as it hurtles toward the forest floor. The falconer's heart leaps in his chest as he watches the bird descend, his gaze fixed on the spot where the bird will strike. The forest is still, the air tense with anticipation. In an instant, the falcon strikes, its talons latching onto the prey with deadly accuracy. The forest erupts into motion as the bird lands, its powerful wings spreading wide to maintain balance. As it holds its catch, the falconer approaches slowly, his presence calm but steady. He can see the bird's chest rising and falling with each breath, its eyes gleaming with the triumph of the hunt. The falconer reaches out, gently touching bird's feathers as he praises its skill. It's a moment of quiet victory, a reminder of the silent bond they share, built on trust and understanding. The falcon releases its grip on the prey, allowing the falconer to retrieve it. The bird, its work done, stands proudly on the falconer's arm, its wings folding neatly against its body. The hunt is complete, but the bond between man and bird remains unbroken. As the falconer walks back through the forest, the weight of the prey in his hands and the bird perched silently at his side, he feels a deep sense of gratitude. This hunt, like all others, is not just about survival or skill, it is about the quiet connection between two beings, the shared moments of effort and triumph that bind them together. In the fading light of the afternoon, the forest begins to quiet once more. The rustling of leaves grows softer, the breeze gentler, as the day turns toward the evening. The falconer feels the weight of the day lifting from his shoulders, the peaceful rhythm of the hunt settling in his mind. He walks with purpose, knowing that in the quiet moments to come, the forest will offer its own kind of reward, a sense of fulfillment, of connection, and of peace. As the sun sets behind the trees, casting long shadows across the forest floor, the falconer knows that this is just one chapter in the ongoing story of their shared lives. The hunt is never over, and neither is the bond between him and the falcon. The trust they have built, the quiet moments of connection, will endure. Long after the sun has set and the day has ended, it is a bond that goes beyond the hunt, beyond the simple act of capturing prey. It is a bond forged in the stillness of the forest, in the silence of the hunt, and in the shared understanding of two beings who have become one. As night falls, still, the falconer and his bird walk side by side, their hearts beating in unison, their connection as strong as the wings that carried them through the forest. The forest feels different under the glow of the moon. As the falconer walks through the familiar path, the landscape seems to take on a new life, shrouded in the silver light that spills through the gaps in the dense canopy above. The trees, towering and ancient, cast long shadows across the ground, their bark gleaming faintly under the ethereal glow. The air is cooler now, the scent of pine and damp earth more pronounced in the night's stillness. The falconer's boots crunch softly against the forest floor as he moves, each step purposeful yet unhurried. The falcon, perched on his arm, shifts slightly, its feathers rustling as it looks around, its keen eyes catching every movement in the darkness. The bird, though used to the night, seems more alert tonight, its senses heightened by the quiet of the woods. The falconer can feel the bird's energy, its readiness to take flight at any moment. And he knows that the night ahead will be different more than just a routine walk through the forest. There is something in the air, a subtle shift that tells him the journey they are on tonight is one that holds deeper meaning. The light from the moon guides their way, casting shadows that dance across the ground, creating an illusion of movement in the stillness. See, the falconer pauses for a moment, taking in the serenity of the forest. He feels a deep connection to the woods, to the bird, and to the moment. The silence envelops him, offering peace and a sense of calm that only the night can provide. The owl's call echoes from a distance, the only sound breaking the stillness. The falconer looks up, his eyes following the movement of the bird in the trees, and he feels a sense of unity with the nocturnal world around him. It is during these quiet moments that the bond between man and bird feels most profound. There is no need for words. Their connection transcends the need for speech. Built over countless hours spent in each other's presence, sharing the rhythm of the hunt, the quiet of the woods, and the trust that flows between them. The falconer adjusts the jesses on the bird's legs, ensuring that the connection between them remains secure yet comfortable. The bird stirs slightly, as if acknowledging the falconer's touch, its eyes still fixed on the shadows ahead. With a soft murmur, the falconer signals the bird to take flight, his arm extended, the familiar gesture that marks the beginning of another journey through the night. The bird flutters its wings, taking off with grace and precision, disappearing into the darkness above. The falconer watches as the bird ascends, the sound of its wings barely audible as it soars into the vast expanse of night. He feels the pull of the bird's flight, the sense of freedom that comes with the bird's effortless glide through the air. The forest below seems to hold its breath as the falcon rises higher, its silhouette outlined against the moonlit sky. For a moment, the falconer is alone, standing in the forest, the silence pressing in around him. But he knows the bird is never far, always within reach, always watching over him. He begins to walk again, his pace steady, his eyes scanning the darkened woods, waiting for the bird's return. It is a journey that has become second nature, the trust and understanding between them so deeply ingrained that it feels as though they are one entity moving through the forest together. As the falconer walks deeper into the woods, the sounds of the forest begin to change. The rustling of leaves becomes more pronounced, the calls of distant animals more urgent. The falconer's senses sharpen, and he feels the shift in the air. The way the night seems to come alive with hidden movement. Bird is still out there, high above, its sharp eyes surveying the landscape below. He knows that the falcon is searching, moving in and out of the shadows, ready to spot any sign of prey. The bond between them, forged over years of silent communication, is in full display now. The falconer feels the bird's focus, its determination, and he knows that it is only a matter of time before the bird spots something that will bring them closer to their goal. The silence of the woods presses in around him, but it is a comfortable silence, one that speaks of trust and shared purpose. Every step the falconer takes is deliberate. Every movement with the bird is guided by years of shared experience. There is no need for haste, no need for words. Everything flows naturally between them, a dance that has been honed over time. As the falconer pauses once more, he senses the bird's descent. The subtle shift in the air as the bird circles lower, preparing for the strike. The forest seems to hold its breath, waiting for the moment to unfold. The falconer's heart beats, in sync with the bird's wings, each beat a silent promise of success, a promise that is kept every time they hunt together. The bird's shadow passes overhead, and the falconer looks up, his eyes meeting the bird's as it circles once more, before diving into the depths of the forest. The forest awakens in a burst of movement, the rustle of leaves, the soft thud of hooves on the ground, the screech of an animal caught in the bird's talons. The hunt is on. The falconer moves swiftly, his hand outstretched as he calls the bird back, guiding it to land softly on his arm. The catch is made, the prey secured. The falconer's heart swells with pride, a quiet victory shared between him and the bird. The night is still, save for the sounds of the forest as the falconer checks the prey, ensuring that the bird's skill has been rewarded. The moment is fleeting, but the bond remains, as strong as the wings that carry them through the night. As the falconer makes his way back through the woods, the moonlight guides their path, casting long shadows on the ground. The bird rests once more, its chest rising and falling with the rhythm of the hunt. The forest, now peaceful once again, seems to welcome their return. The journey has come to an end, but the connection remains, deep and unbreakable, forged in the quiet moments of the night. The falconer walks with purpose, his steps steady, the bird at his side. The hunt is over, but the journey continues, always through the moonlit forest, casting its pale light across the trees, and the night deepened around them. The falconer, lost in thought, wondered about the days that lay ahead, what challenges, what joys, and what quiet moments would come. But for now, there was no thought of the future, no longing for anything beyond this moment. In the quiet of the woods, with the falcon perched on his arm, the falconer knew that this was enough. The bond they shared was all-encompassing, built on trust, patience, and respect for the world around them. It was in these quiet, unspoken moments that the true depth of their connection became clear. He could feel it in the steady beat of his own heart, in the rhythm of the falcon's breathing. They were, in a sense, two halves of a whole, each needing the other to navigate the complexities of the world. The falconer smiled softly to himself, knowing that this was the life he had chosen, a life in which the forest, the bird, and the moments of stillness that arose from them were all that mattered. The silence stretched on, comfortable and complete. Slowly, the falconer began to walk again, the bird following his every movement with practiced grace. There was no rush now, no urgency to be anywhere but here. The forest around them, bathed in the soft moonlight, seemed to stretch on forever, and the path ahead, though familiar, still held a sense of mystery. Each step felt like a promise, one that had been made long ago between the falconer and the bird, a promise to walk together through the seasons, through the changes that life would bring. As they moved deeper into the forest, the falconer felt the weight of the night settle around him, but it was not a burden. It was a comfort, like the embrace of an old friend. With every step, with every breath, the forest wrapped around him more tightly, until he was one with it, part of the earth, part of the sky, and part of the eternal rhythm of life. The falconer did not speak as they walked, but the silence between him and the bird was enough. There were no words needed to express the bond they shared, the understanding between them that could only be forged through years of companionship, care, and trust. As the moon continued its slow ascent, the falconer felt a quiet peace settle over him, knowing that this was where he belonged. In the woods with his bird, moving through the night, one step at a time. The forest, draped in the cool embrace of night, stood like a silent sentinel, watching over the falconer and his companion as they made their way through the quiet wilderness. Every step they took seemed to echo softly in the stillness, the crunch of leaves and twigs underfoot blending with the distant calls of owls and the soft rustling of leaves stirred by a gentle breeze. The moon, now high in the sky, cast its silver light across the forest floor, bathing the trees and underbrush in an ethereal glow. The falconer's gloved hand rested lightly on the bird's perch, his fingers brushing against the soft feathers of his companion, whose calm presence offered a steady rhythm to the evening. They had walked for hours, but there was no sense of hurry. The world around them, with its unhurried pace, offered a sense of peace, a quiet that the falconer had come to treasure over the years. As they continued deeper into the woods, the falconer's thoughts drifted to the time they had spent together the hunts, the quiet moments shared in the cool of the morning, the days spent watching the world change as the seasons passed. The bond between him and the bird was unspoken but undeniable, woven into every shared experience, every moment of understanding. It was a bond forged in patience, trust, and a deep respect for the natural world they both called home. Yet tonight there was an air of something different. It was not the same stillness they had grown accustomed to, the peace that accompanied their evening walks. Tonight something hung in the air, an unspoken anticipation. The falconer could feel it as they moved through the forest, a quiet tension, that seemed to seep into the very ground beneath them, settling into the space between them. The bird, too, seemed to sense it. It shifted on its perch, its sharp eyes scanning the trees and the shadowed underbrush, alert and vigilant. The falconer paused, his gaze lifting toward the canopy above, where the branches formed a patchwork of shadow and light. His senses were heightened, aware of every sound, every shift in the wind. The forest was alive, but tonight it seemed to hold its breath, waiting for something to unfold. The falconer's hand tightened slightly on the bird's perch, a subtle sign of his growing restlessness. He had seen this behavior before when the air was thick with expectation, when something beyond the usual rhythm of their lives was about to happen. And so they waited. Time seemed to stretch on, each moment an eternity. The falconer's breath slowed, his body tense with anticipation, yet there was no sound, no movement to suggest what was to come. The woods, once a place of quiet refuge, had become a place of holding. Every breath felt drawn out, every movement deliberate, as if the forest itself was waiting for the inevitable. The falconer remained still, his eyes trained on the shadows, his mind focused on the bird in his care. He could feel the rhythm of its breathing, the steady rise and fall of its chest in the cool night air. It was a moment suspended in time, both infinite and fleeting, a reminder of the quiet and slow passage of existence. In this space there was no room for anything but the moment. Every inch of the forest seemed to hold its breath, as if it too was waiting for something to break this silence. The falconer's thoughts drifted again, back to the beginning, the first time he had met the bird, the first time they had stood together in the stillness of the woods. He had known, even then, that there was something special about this bond, something more profound than the simple act of hunting or companionship. It was a connection that had formed over time, woven through shared experiences and mutual respect. The falconer had never questioned it. It was simply understood, a part of who they were. And now, as they stood together in the heart of the forest, he could not help but feel the weight of that connection. It was a force greater than the world around them, a reminder that in this vast and ever-changing landscape they were not alone. The bird shifted again, its sharp eyes scanning the environment, its feathers ruffling slightly in the cool breeze. The falconer held his breath, waiting. It wasn't fear, not exactly, but something akin to it. The world had shifted in some subtle way, and neither man nor bird knew what would happen next. The forest felt darker now, as if the trees themselves had drawn closer, the shadows deepening with the passing of time. The wind picked up again, rustling the leaves and causing the branches to sway. The falconer's mind raced, his heart beating faster as the tension in the air mounted. Something was coming, something that would change the course of their night. But the world around them remained still, as if waiting for the moment to unfold. As they stood together, the falconer could feel the weight of the silence, the growing pressure of anticipation. The moments stretched on, the minutes blending into each other until they became a blur, until the waiting became its own form of existence. And then, finally, there was a shift. It was barely perceptible at first, small sound in the distance, a rustle of leaves that did not belong to the wind. The falcon's eyes snapped toward the source, its body tensing with readiness. The falconer felt the shift, too, in his chest, in his limbs. It was time. The world around them was waking, and they would soon find themselves in the thick of it. The falconer's grip tightened on the bird's perch, his breath steady as he prepared for what was to come. The waiting had ended, and now the hunt would begin. In the stillness of the forest, under the watchful gaze of the moon, the falconer and his companion moved as one into the night. The forest lay beneath a heavy cloak of stillness, the weight of the night pressing down on the land. As the falconer and his companion moved deeper into the heart of the woods, the air, thick with the scent of pine and damp earth, seemed to hum with an unseen presence, a subtle undercurrent of energy that neither man nor bird could quite name. The falconer's breath slowed as he navigated the familiar path, the crunch of the forest floor beneath his boots offering a steady rhythm to the stillness. His hand rested lightly on the bird's perch, feeling the delicate pulse of its life, a reminder of the bond they shared. The falcon.com, yet alert, perched gracefully on its handler's glove, its keen eyes sweeping across the darkened landscape, catching every detail, every subtle movement in the shadows. The night had grown heavier, the world around them seemingly holding its breath, waiting for something to unfold. The falconer could feel it an unfamiliar shift, a quiet disturbance in the natural flow of things. The trees, once steadfast and unwavering, seemed to sway just slightly, as though they were whispering secrets to each other in a language long forgotten. The breeze that had once been gentle now felt charged, its touch more urgent, like a warning, carried on the wind. Yet there was no sound, no indication of what lay ahead. The silence was almost suffocating. The falconer's mind raced as he moved forward, his senses heightened, alert to the smallest detail. What had changed? What was different tonight? His pulse quickened as he felt the weight of the air around him shift, growing thicker, heavier. Something was watching them, something unseen but very much present. The bird sensed it to its feathers, spur, ruffling slightly as it tilted its head. Its sharp gaze fixed on the shadows that stretched across the ground like fingers reaching out from the darkness. It was the kind of stillness that hinted at danger, at an unknown presence lurking just out of sight, waiting for the right moment to make itself known. The falconer paused, his heart beating in time with the rhythm of the forest, every nerve on edge, every sense attuned to the unseen. The bird's wings fluttered nervously, its body shifting slightly as it picked up on the same disturbance, the same unsettling presence that now seemed to fill the air around them. The falconer took a deep breath, trying to calm his racing thoughts. He had walked these woods for years, had known its every turn, its every shadow. But tonight, something was different. Something had changed, and he could not shake the feeling that they were being watched. He glanced at the falcon, whose eyes were wide, unblinking, searching the darkness for any sign of movement. Its talons dug into the leather of the falconer's glove, a subtle sign of its growing unease. The falconer adjusted his grip, offering the bird reassurance, though he himself was not sure if he believed it. The night stretched on, every minute feeling like an eternity. The forest around them felt as though it was closing in, the trees pressing ever closer, the shadows growing deeper, more consuming. The falconer's breath came in shallow bursts, each one a reminder of the tension that had built up between them and the night. The air was thick now, heavy with the weight of anticipation, as if the forest itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. And then, just as the silence seemed unbearable, there was a sound of faint rustle, care, a movement in the brush just ahead, tear. The falcon's head snapped up, its body tensing in an instant, its sharp eyes narrowing as it tracked the sound, every muscle in its body coiled and ready to spring into action. The falconer's heart skipped a beat. He knew the sound. He had heard it before, the subtle rustle of something moving through the undergrowth, something quick, something purposeful. His grip tightened on the bird's perch as he carefully began to advance, his every step deliberate, his eyes scanning the darkened landscape. Every sound, every movement was amplified in the stillness, each one carrying a weight that seemed too heavy for the night. He knew better than to rush, knew that the forest demanded patience, demanded quiet observation. But there was no denying the tension, no denying the sense of urgency that had taken root in his chest. He could feel it, could sense it in the very air, the presence that watched them, waited for them to make their move. The falcon, too, seemed to feel it. Its body was now rigid, every feather held in place as it waited for the signal, its instincts ready to kick in at a moment's notice. The falconer had no doubt that the bird was aware of the same unease, the same unseen presence that now hung, hid in the air like a heavy fog. Slowly, cautiously, he made his way forward, his senses heightened, his eyes constantly scanning for any movement, any hint of the source of the disturbance. His pulse quickened as the rustling sound grew louder, closer. It was coming from just ahead, somewhere in the thick underbrush. And then, without warning, the rustling stopped. The forest went completely still, as if holding its breath once, again. The falconer paused, every muscle in his body frozen in place. The silence was deafening, the kind of silence that filled the space with a sense of foreboding, the kind of silence that made every heartbeat sound too loud, every breath too sharp. The world seemed to be suspended, hanging in the balance. And then, just as suddenly as it had stopped, the rustling began again, this time louder, more frantic. Something was moving through the brush with purpose, and it was coming toward them. The falconer's heart pounded in his chest as he instinctively reached for the bird's jesses, steadying his hand. He knew what came next. He knew that the moment of uncertainty was about to end. The forest was about to reveal what had been hiding in its depths, and he would have no choice but to face it head-on. In the eerie silence of the night, the falconer steeled himself. The presence was close now, closer than it had ever been. The hunt had begun, and the woods were no longer a sanctuary, but a battleground where they would face whatever waited in the shadows. As the night deepened and the air grew heavier with the scent of damp earth, the falconer stood still, his senses heightened by the stillness of the woods around him. The bird on his arm, still alert, ruffled its feathers slightly, as if it too sensed the weight of the moment. The rustling that had been so faint just moments before was now clearer, sharper, closer. It was no longer the gentle whisper of the wind or the quiet shuffle of leaves. This was deliberate, purposeful, as though something was drawing nearer with intent. The falconer's grip on the jesses tightened. his pulse quickening as the tension in the air became almost unbearable. He knew the woods well, had spent countless nights walking its winding paths and breathing in its mysteries. But tonight felt different. Tonight, the forest seemed to be holding its breath, as if awaiting something or someone. Gabe. The rustling stopped abruptly, leaving only the unsettling silence behind. The falconer's eyes scanned the underbrush, seeking any sign, any movement. It was then that he heard it, the faintest of sounds, almost imperceptible. A low hum that seemed to reverberate through the ground beneath his boots. It wasn't a sound he had ever heard before, not in all his years in these woods. It was as though the very earth itself was whispering something just out of reach, a secret that was too old to be remembered, yet too powerful to ignore. He exhaled, slowly, trying to steady his breath, and placed his free hand over his heart, grounding himself against the rising tide of unease. Something was here. Something that had been lost to time but had now returned, drawn from the past like a shadow, resurfacing from the depths of the earth. The bird's wings fluttered nervously as it sensed its handler's growing tension, its head swiveling from side to side, searching for the source of the disturbance. The falconer shifted his weight and began to walk forward, carefully stepping, over roots and fallen leaves, his every step a quiet echo in the otherwise oppressive silence. His mind raced as he thought of the legends that had been passed down through the generations, stories of creatures that had once roamed the forest, beasts, ancient spirits, and the unexplainable forces that moved in the shadows of the world. Were these just stories? Or were they remnants of something real, something that had been waiting for the right moment to reveal itself? The bird gave a low cry, breaking the silence, and the falconer paused. The sound had come from deeper in the woods, from the heart, character of the forest. Without thinking, he began moving toward it, drawn by an instinct he couldn't explain. Each step seemed to carry him further into the unknown, as though the forest itself was guiding him toward something that had been lost for centuries. The further he walked, the more the air seemed to thicken, pressing in on him with an almost tangible force. The trees loomed overhead like silent sentinels, their twisted branches stretching out in every direction, forming dark labyrinthine patterns against the night sky. There was something ancient about this part of the forest, something untouched by time. As he moved deeper, the faint hum grew louder, more pronounced, until it was vibrating through the very ground beneath his feet. The falconer's breath caught in his throat. What was it? The sound seemed to be calling to him, beckoning him further into the heart of the forest. It was then that he saw it, a flicker of movement in the distance, just beyond the reach of the fading light. At first, it was nothing more than a shadow, a shift in the darkness that could have been mistaken for the wind, but then it came into sharper focus, and the falconer froze, his heart pounding in his chest. It was no longer just a shadow, it was something real, something that was moving toward him. The figure was cloaked in darkness, its shape indistinct, but unmistakably humanoid. It moved silently, its steps gliding effortlessly over the forest floor. The falconer's mind raced, but he couldn't make sense of what he was seeing. Was it a person, a ghost, or something else entirely? The bird, now perched on his arm, emitted a low rumbling growl, its talons tightening around the falconer's glove. Falconer reached for the bird's reins, preparing himself for whatever might come next, his senses on high alert. The figure approached, its movements slow and deliberate. As it drew closer, the falconer could see more clearly the figure. Quack was cloaked in a dark, flowing garment that shimmered in the low light, its face obscured by a hood. The falconer's hand tightened on the jesses as he instinctively stepped back, a sense of caution taking over. The figure stopped just out of reach, and for a moment there was complete silence. The falconer's heart raced, his breath shallow, squaw, as he waited for the figure to speak, to make its intentions known. The figure lifted its head slightly, revealing nothing but darkness beneath the hood. But then, a voice that was both ancient and distant spoke, its words echoing in the falconer's mind. "You seek what was lost," the voice whispered, its tone both haunting and familiar. "But be warned, not all knowledge is meant to be found." The falconer stood still, caught between confusion and fear. The figure before him remained motionless, but the words lingered, a chilling warning that seemed to reverberate in the very air around him. His mind raced, searching for any explanation, any understanding of what was happening. What had he stumbled upon? What was this presence, this ancient force that seemed to be guiding him toward something he was not prepared to face? The figure remained silent, watching him with an intensity that sent a shiver down his spine. The falconer's grip tightened on his bird's reins, his fingers trembling slightly. The tension in the air was almost unbearable, the weight of the moment pressing down on him with a force that felt beyond his control. And then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the figure turned, its movement fluid and swift, disappearing into the depths of the forest store. The falconer stood frozen, his breath catching in his throat. The forest had fallen silent once again, as if nothing had happened. But he knew better. The encounter had been no dream, no figment of his imagination. Something was changing in the woods, something ancient and powerful, and it was drawing him deeper into the mystery of the forest than he had ever imagined. KS, gnarled and twisted, as though they had been shaped by forces beyond the passage of time. The sunlight struggled to penetrate the thick canopy, casting the forest floor into a perpetual twilight. The falconer slowed his pace, aware that the deeper he went, the more the forest seemed to close in around him. It was as if the very air had thickened, becoming heavy with the weight of untold secrets. The birds, which had once filled the trees with their songs, were now silent. Even the wind seemed reluctant to stir, leaving only the faint sound of his boots crunching against the fallen leaves. Suddenly, the bird on his arm flapped its wings, sending a brief, sharp sound through the stillness. The falconer's heart leaped, but the bird was only adjusting its position, its wings brushing against the falconer's arm as it settled back down. Yet the tension remained. Something was wrong. The falconer paused, scanning the path ahead. It was then that he noticed a faint glow, almost imperceptible at first, coming from beyond the cluster of thick bushes and low-hanging vines. Curiosity piqued, he approached slowly, his breath steady but his heart pounding in his chest. The glow flickered, like the light of distant fireflies, but brighter, more deliberate. He hesitated for a moment, unsure of what he might find, but there was no turning back now. The words of the mysterious figure echoed in his mind once again, and with them the burning desire to know what lay hidden beneath the surface of the forest's ancient secrets. He pushed the vines aside, stepping into a small clearing where the light seemed to be emanating from an ancient stone structure, half covered in moss and ivy. The stones were worn and weathered, their surfaces etched with markings that appeared, almost like a language there, meaning lost to time. At the center of the clearing stood an altar, its surface adorned with strange symbols, some of which seemed to shift and shimmer in the light. The falconer took a step forward, feeling an inexplicable pull toward the altar. He reached out, his fingers brushing the cold stone, and a wave of energy rippled through him, as though the forest itself had taken a deep, shuddering breath. The air grew heavy, and for the briefest moment he felt a presence, an ancient, unseen force watching him. The falconer withdrew his hand, startled by the sudden surge of power that seemed to radiate from the altar. His instincts told him to leave, to turn back and return to the familiar paths of the forest. But something in him resisted. The forest had drawn him here for a reason. This place, this altar, held the answers he had been seeking. His mind raced, trying to make sense of the feeling, the sensation of being connected to something far older, far more powerful than he could comprehend. As he stood there, contemplating the altar, a low voice whispered in his ear, so faint it could have been the wind or a trick of his imagination. "The forest remembers," the voice said, its tone both soft and menacing, "and it will not forget." The falconer shuddered, looking around, but saw nothing. The feeling, however, lingered an oppressive weight, as though the very air around him had thickened with ancient knowledge and forgotten truths. He stepped back, his heart racing. The altar seemed to hum, its energy growing stronger, more intense. He had uncovered something important, but he didn't understand it, not yet. His falcon, still perched on his arm, gave a sharp call, its wings fluttering restlessly. The falconer looked at the bird, sensing its unease. Whatever this place was, it was not meant to be disturbed. The falconer took a deep breath, steadying himself. He knew he couldn't stay here much longer. Whatever force had drawn him into this sacred space was now warning him to leave, and with the warning came the undeniable urge to heed it. He turned away from the altar, his steps slow and measured, but his mind was already racing with the implications of what he had found. This forest, this ancient place, was far more than a sanctuary for his falcon. It was a repository of forgotten power, of lost knowledge, and it seemed to have chosen him as its unwitting keeper. As he walked away, the glow of the altar faded, palm behind him, swallowed by the shadows of the forest, but the pull of the ancient energy remained, lingering in his thoughts, pushing him to return, to learn more. He was no longer simply a falconer. He had become a part of something greater, living linked to the past, to the forces that had shaped this land long before he had ever set foot upon it. The forest had revealed its first secret to him, but he knew this was only the beginning. There was more to uncover, more to understand, and he would stop at nothing to find it. The sun was now fully risen, its golden rays filtering through the thick canopy, casting an ethereal glow across the forest floor. The falconer moved cautiously through the woods, every step deliberate, as he retraced his path back toward the ancient altar. Something within him urged him to return, to understand what had stirred within him when he had touched the stone. A feeling of connection to the forest, to its untold secrets, had only grown stronger with each passing moment, pulling him back into the heart of its mysterious depths. Yet there was an undercurrent of unease, a sense that he was being watched, by eyes unseen, as if the trees themselves were alive with a watchful consciousness. The air was cooler now, and the soft rustling of the leaves seemed to whisper warnings, the wind carrying with it a tension that had not been present before. Even the falcon, which had flown ahead and perched on a branch just out of reach, seemed uneasy, its sharp eyes scanning the forest with a heightened awareness. The falconer had never seen his companion behave this way before. The bird, usually calm and resolute, was now on edge, its feathers slightly fluffed, its wings twitching at the slightest sound. He could feel the change in the atmosphere, a palpable shift that had occurred after his encounter with the altar. Was it the forest itself that was warning him, or was it something deeper, something ancient and forgotten? The silence around him had taken on a new quality, almost as if the forest was holding its breath, waiting for something to unfold. His heart pounded in his chest as he continued forward, each step heavier than the last, the weight of his own thoughts pressing, course against him like an invisible force. Deep. The path seemed longer, darker, the trees seeming to close in around him as he neared the clearing. The air felt thick with something unseen, something that seemed to pulse just beneath the surface of the earth, calling out to him. When he reached the clearing, he paused, scanning the area before stepping into the open. The altar stood as it had before, untouched, but the energy in the air was different, stronger, more potent. There was a low hum now, a vibration that seemed to emanate from the stone itself, as if the altar were alive, waiting. He approached cautiously, feeling the pull once again, but this time there was a reluctance in his every movement. The forest had spoken, or rather, it had whispered, and in that whisper he heard a warning. Yet the temptation to learn, to uncover the truths hidden within this sacred space, was overwhelming. He reached for the altar again, his fingers brushing against the cool stone. The moment his skin made contact, the hum grew louder, vibrating through his very bones, sending a shock of cold through him. The forest responded in kind, the trees swaying more violently than before, their branches creaking as though protesting his intrusion. His falcon gave a sharp cry, its wings flapping wildly as it took flight, circling above him in agitation. A gust of wind blew through the clearing, carrying with it the faint scent of damp earth and something darker, more unsettling. The falconer's heart raced as the feeling of being watched intensified, and he realized with a jolt that the forest was not just a passive witness to his actions, it was a living entity, one that could feel and react to his every movement. The wind carried with it a voice, faint and ethereal, barely audible above the rustling of the leaves. "You tread where you are not welcome," the voice whispered, its tone both mournful and foreboding. The falconer froze, his hand still resting on the altar, as the weight of those words settled in his chest. The forest had spoken again, but this time it was not a warning, it was a plea to stop, to turn back before it was too late. But the falconer, driven by the same compulsion that had brought him here in the first place, refused to heed the warning. The truth, whatever it was just beyond his reach, and he could not resist the pull to uncover it. Hugh must leave. The voice urged again, stronger now, as if the forest itself was growing desperate. "The price is more than you understand." But the falconer, gripped by the relentless desire to know, lifted his hand from the altar and stepped back. "I will not leave until I understand," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. The moment the words left his lips, the atmosphere shifted again. The temperature dropped, and the ground beneath his feet seemed to tremble ever so slightly. The trees groaned as if in warning, their branches creaking and snapping in protest. The falcon circled above him, screeching now, its cries echoing through the forest as though it too was trying to reach him, to pull him away from this path he had chosen. But the falconer stood his ground. He could not turn back now, not when he was so close. He reached out again, his fingers brushing the cold stone of the altar. The moment he made contact, the ground shook violently, sending him stumbling back, his heart racing in his chest. The trees around him trembled, their roots shifting beneath the soil, as though the very earth itself was protesting his intrusion. Ka! And then, from the depths of the forest, a sound unlike anything he had ever heard filled the air, low, guttural growl, ancient and primal, as if the forest itself were waking from a long slumber. The falconer's blood ran cold as the growl grew louder, its intensity shaking the very air around him. It was no longer just the forest that was alive, it was something deeper, something darker. He knew in that moment that he had uncovered something far more dangerous than he had ever imagined. The forest was not just a place of wonder, was a place of power, and that power had been disturbed. The falconer's heart pounded as the growl intensified, and he knew he had made a grave mistake. The forest had warned him. The forest had pleaded with him to leave. But it was too late now. The altar's power had awakened, and with it the Forest's true nature had been revealed, one that was far more ancient and unforgiving than he had ever understood. The air around him grew heavier, the trees bending inward as though enclosing him in their grasp. The falcon cried out one final time before disappearing into the darkening sky. And as the falconer stood frozen in the clearing, the full weight, terror of his actions settled upon him. The forest had spoken, but now there would be no turning back. The atmosphere hung heavy with the weight of the unknown as the falconer stood in the clearing, his heart thumping in his chest. The growl that reverberated through the trees seemed to echo in the deepest corners of his mind, a sound so ancient, so primal, that it felt as if the very earth itself were warning him he had ventured too far. The delicate balance between him and the forest had shifted, and now the forest itself seemed to awaken with a ferocity he had never anticipated. The air was thick with tension, every gust of wind carrying a whisper, of something far darker than anything he had known before. His breath was shallow as he glanced around the clearing, the trees bending ominously as though they were sentient, their branches clawing toward him, their leaves whispering of secrets long buried. The once comforting rustling of the leaves now felt like an ominous murmur, the wind speaking in voices he could barely understand. The falconer's mind raced as he struggled to comprehend the weight of his actions. He had touched the altar, defied the warnings of the forest, and now he was paying the price. His gaze flickered to the falcon, perched on a branch just out of reach, its wings slightly spread, its sharp eyes scanning the horizon as if it, too, felt the shift in the air. The bird was unsettled, its once calm demeanor now replaced with an intensity that mirrored his own growing anxiety. The falconer reached out, his hand trembling as he tried to connect with the bird, to calm it, but the falcon refused to make eye contact. Instead, it stared into the distance, its feathers bristling as if sensing an approaching danger. The ground beneath his feet trembled once again, the soft earth shifting and groaning as though it were alive, a stark reminder that the very foundation of the forest was reacting to his intrusion. A gust of wind swept through the clearing, sending a chill down his spine as it carried with it the scent of damp earth and something else, something metallic and foul. He turned, his eyes scanning the trees, and that's when he saw Ita at the edge of the clearing. The shadows seemed to writhe, twisting and coiling like serpents, their forms growing and shifting with an unnatural fluidity. The falconer's cart stopped. The shadows were not simply cast by the trees, they were something more, something ancient and dark, as though they had always been there, waiting. They were watching him. As his mind struggled to grasp what he was seeing, a low, guttural voice, unlike any sound he had ever heard before, reverberated through the air, sending a chill down his spine. It was not a voice of a man, nor of a creature, but something far older, far more ancient. "You have disturbed the balance," it whispered, the words sending a ripple through the air. "The forest is awake now, and it will not forgive." The falconer staggered back, his body trembling, but his feet remained rooted to the earth as though the very ground had claimed him. He had heard of such things, of ancient spirits and forces that lay dormant, waiting for the right moment to rise, but he had never believed them, never believed that such power could exist outside the legends of old. But now, standing in the heart of this forest, he realized the truth. The forest was alive. The forest was watching, and it had been waiting for him. A sudden, piercing cry from above broke through his thoughts. He looked up to see the falcon circling overhead, its wings cutting through the air in sharp, erratic movements. The bird's eyes were wide, its gaze frantic as it circled faster, the rhythmic beat of its wings like a frantic drum in the otherwise silent air. The falconer knew that the falcon was trying to warn him. But what could it mean? What danger was approaching? He looked back at the shifting shadows at the edge of the clearing, his breath caught in his throat. They were moving closer now, drawing near with unnatural speed. The trees around the clearing seemed to bend in their direction, their trunks twisting as if yielding to an invisible force. A low rumble, like distant thunder, rumbled through the ground beneath him, growing louder, closer. The falconer's pulse quickened as the shadows began to take shape figures, human in form but twisted, distorted, as though made of the very darkness itself. Their eyes glowed with an eerie, unnatural light, and their movements were fluid, serpentine, as if they were not bound by the laws of nature. They moved with purpose, their steps synchronized as they approached the falconer. His body froze, but his mind screamed for him to move, to run, to escape, but his legs would not obey. He had no choice but to watch as they advanced, their eyes fixed on him, their silent approach like a death march. A soft, melodic hum began to fill the air, the sound coming from the shadows themselves, a haunting melody that reverberated through his bones. It was as though the forest itself was singing a song of mourning, and the falconer realized with a shiver that he was the cause of its grief. He had disturbed something ancient, something beyond his understanding, and now the forest was reclaiming its power. The shadows reached the clearing's edge, and the falconer's breath hitched. The figures did not speak, but the air around them pulsed with an energy that made his skin crawl. They did not need to speak. Their presence alone was enough to convey their intent. The falconer had to leave, but he could not move. The birds above him had ceased their frantic cries, and even the wind seemed to still, as if holding its breath. The forest was waiting for him to act, but he had no idea what to do. Every instinct in his body screamed for him to run, but he could not make himself move. And as the shadows continued to encircle him, the falconer realized the terrible truth. Todd had become a part of the forest's ancient cycle, and there was no escaping the consequences of his actions. The forest had spoken, but now it was time for him to listen. The wind picked up again, howling through the trees like a storm as the figures closed in around him, their presence suffocating, their intent clear. The forest was awakening, and there would be no turning back. The falconer's breath was shallow, his pulse quickening with every passing moment. The shadows that surrounded him were no longer just figures, they had taken on a life of their own, a presence that was palpable and suffocating. He could feel the weight of their gaze, their eyes burning into him with an intensity that cut through the very fabric of the air around him. The forest had fallen silent. No birds, no rustling leaves, no whispers of wind, just an eerie stillness that seemed to wrap itself around him, thick and heavy, as though the forest itself was holding its breath. The figures, their forms still for a moment, seemed to ripple, as if they were not bound by any earthly law. They were made of the shadows, yet their shapes were unmistakably human. Their eyes glowed like embers in the night, a fierce light that seemed to see through him, digging into the depths of his very soul. The falconer could feel a chill creeping through his bones, a cold that was not of this world. It was as though the darkness itself had wrapped its tendrils around his heart, squeezing, tightening, drawing him into its grasp. Every instinct told him to run, to flee, to escape the suffocating grip of the forest that had now turned against him. But his feet remained rooted to the ground, his body frozen in place, unable to move as the figures inched closer. They were silent, their movements slow and deliberate, yet there was an unmistakable urgency in their advance. They were not merely watching him, they were judging him. The falconer's mind raced as he tried to make sense of the situation. He had trespassed into the heart of the forest, disturbed something ancient and sacred. But now it felt as though the forest itself was awakening to exact its price. The wind howled once more, tearing through the clearing in a rush, but it brought no comfort. Instead, it felt like the breath of something far more ancient, something that had been waiting in the depths of the forest for an eternity, stirring now in response to the falconer's presence. He could feel it, the stirring of something vast and dark, something that had lain dormant for centuries, if not millennia. The shadows seemed to whisper in unison, their voices like a chorus of sighs, their words unintelligible but full of ancient power. The falconer's heart pounded in his chest, each beat echoing in his ears. His thoughts were jumbled, the weight of the situation pressing down on him like a mountain. He had thought he understood the forest, its rhythms, its secrets. But now, in the presence of these figures, he realized how little he truly knew. The darkness had always been there, hidden in the depths of the trees, in the spaces between the branches, in the shadows that flickered just beyond his sight. It had been waiting, watching, biding its time. And now it had come for him. His hand instinctively moved to his side, where the familiar weight of his falconry glove lay. But the bird, once perched so confidently, was nowhere to be found. Panic surged through him, but it was quickly replaced by a cold, numbing realization. The falcon had not abandoned him, it had been taken by the darkness that surrounded him. He could feel its presence in the air, thick and heavy, like a storm waiting to break. The shadows closed in, their forms shifting as they moved toward him. Their eyes glowed brighter now, the ember-like intensity growing, as if the very forest itself was fueling their power. The falconer tried to take a step backward, but his feet refused to obey. He was trapped, surrounded on all sides, with nowhere to run. His thoughts raced. What had he done? What price was the forest asking him to pay? He had sought the heart of the wilderness, but now it seemed as though the wilderness had claimed him in return. The figures loomed closer, their presence growing, stronger, more powerful with every passing second. They were no longer just shadows, they were the embodiment of the forest itself, of its ancient power, its wrath, and its eternal patience. They had watched him for years, studied his every movement, his every decision, and now they had come for him. The air grew colder still, and the falconer's breath became shallow, his chest tightening as if something invisible was squeezing the life from him. The forest was alive, alive in ways he had never understood, and it was not kind. The shadows reached out, their hands elongated and twisted, their fingers stretching toward him, pulling him closer. He felt the pull, felt the invisible force, grief seas, wrapping round him, pulling him into their embrace. There was no escape. The falconer's heart raced in his chest as the figures drew nearer, their silent steps now audible in the stillness of the night. He wanted to scream, to cry out, but his throat was tight, his voice trapped deep within him. His thoughts were a blur, his mind scrambling to make sense of the situation. But there was nothing to grasp, nothing to hold on to. He had become part of the forest's dark tapestry, a mere thread in the intricate web that had been woven over centuries. And now there was no escaping its grip. The shadows were upon him, their cold hands reaching out to claim him, to pull him into the eternal darkness. The forest was calling him, and he had no choice but to answer. The darkness swallowed him whole, and for a moment all was silent. The wind had stopped, the rustling of the trees had ceased, and the shadows had consumed everything. There was sore, only the faint echo of the falconer's heart, beating one last time before the forest's ancient wrath took its final toll. The air was thick with tension, the silence surrounding the falconer oppressive and heavy. as he stood amidst the dense trees of the forest that had now become his prison. There were no sounds, no rustling of leaves, no calls of animals, no distant winds to break the unnatural stillness. It was as if the entire world had held its breath, waiting for the inevitable conclusion of the long journey he had unwittingly started. His body trembled slightly, his muscles sore from the strain of both fear and the long night of being ensnared in the forest's ancient grip. His mind raced, a maelstrom of thoughts, regrets, and questions that swirled around him, desperately, seeking answers to what had transpired, to the shadowy figures that had come and gone, and to the bird, his loyal companion, who had been taken from him. The falcon, once perched proudly on his gloved hand, now seemed like a distant memory. It was no longer a partner in the wilderness, but a symbol of everything the falconer had lost his trust in the world around him. His place in the natural order, his connection to the forest. His eyes, darkened by exhaustion and uncertainty, scanned the dim-shadowed clearing in front of him. He could feel something shift, something in the very atmosphere, as if the forest itself was awakening once more, this time not to a mere visitor but to something that had long been waiting, anticipating this moment. The ground beneath his feet seemed to pulse, its deep, ancient heart beating with the rhythm of the forest, the pulse of something primordial and inescapable. Every instinct screamed for him to flee, to run, to find some way to escape this unseen force that seems to hold him in place. But there was no escape. The dense trees, the thick underbrush, the weight of the forest itself, every part of the wilderness seemed to conspire to keep him here, to bind him to this dark fate. The falconer's breath hitched as a familiar sound reached his ears, the soft fluttering of wings, the distinct rustle of feathers in the air. He turned, desperately searching for any sign of his companion, the bird that had always stood by his side. And then, as if summoned by his very thoughts, the falcon appeared. It descended from the canopy above, its powerful wings cutting through the air with effortless grace. But something was different. The falcon's once gleaming feathers were now dull, the sharpness of its eyes replaced by something colder, darker. There was no recognition in its gaze, no warmth, no bond of trust. It was as if the forest itself had claimed the bird, turning it into something else, something unrecognizable, a mere extension of the wilderness that had ensnared him. The falconer's heart sank as the bird landed before him, its talons clicking against the earth, its wings folding in a slow, deliberate motion. The creature that had once been his ally was now a harbinger of something darker, something beyond his understanding. The forest was no longer simply the place he had wandered, bitten into. It had become something far more powerful, far more malevolent. It was alive, in ways he could not comprehend, and it had turned against him. He reached out, instinctively, as if to reclaim the bird, to bring back the connection they had shared. But as his hand moved toward the falcon, the air around him seemed to thicken, to resist. A strange energy, dark and oppressive, radiated from the bird, and he felt it pull away, a silent warning that he was not welcome here. His hand faltered mid-air, hesitation seizing him as the reality of his situation sank in. The forest was not just watching it, was taking control. The bond that had once been so strong, so clear, was now shattered, lost to the forest's ancient power. He had become part of the forest's story, part of its eternal cycle, and there was no place for him outside of it. The falcon tilted its head, its eyes gleaming with an unsettling intelligence as it studied him. There was no malice, no a quiet, cold detachment, as if the bird was no longer truly the creature he had known, but rather a vessel for something far older, far more dangerous. The silence hung heavy between them, and the falconer's heart raced. his mind desperate to break free from the trap that had ensnared him. But he knew, deep down, that this was the end. There was no turning back. The forest had claimed him, and now it was time to face the consequences. The shadows around him seemed to deepen, the very air thickening with a palpable sense of finality. The figures, those same shadowy presences that had haunted him, returned, materializing from the darkness like whispers on the wind. Their eyes, glowing faintly in the dim light, fixed on him with an intensity that seemed to pierce through him, cutting through the final shreds of his resolve. He had no strength left to fight, no will left to resist. All that remained was the knowledge that he had come to the end of his journey, and the forest, with all its ancient power, had claimed him as its own. There was a finality in the air now, a stillness that spoke of things beyond mortal understanding. The Falconer's breath slowed, his body growing weaker, his vision clouded as the darkness closed in. The shadows enveloped him, the forest's heartbeat pounding louder in his ears, until all that remained was the soft rustle of leaves, the faint whisper of wings, and the cold embrace of the wilderness that had, in the end, become his tomb. The forest had taken everything, and now there was nothing left but silence. And in that silence, the Falconer's journey came to its inevitable end. As the Falconer stood silently in the twilight, his thoughts wandered back to the earlier days, when every step in the forest felt like an adventure. The memories of training his magnificent bird, watching its wings cut through the air with the grace of a mythological creature, were vivid in his mind. The bird's flight had always been more than just an act of soaring through the sky. It was an expression of freedom, a reminder of the primal bond between human and nature. The deep connection they shared wasn't just based on trust, it was based on respect. A silent understanding that they were both part of a much larger world, bound by the rhythms of nature. The falcon's eyes, sharp and unyielding, scanned the woods beneath them, piercing through the dense undergrowth, as if searching for something only it could see. The falconer admired its ability to perceive the unseen, to detect the tiniest movements that most would overlook. But today, there was a different tension in the air, a certain stillness that made the falconer pause. Something was off. The very trees seemed to hold their breath, as if they, too, were aware of an unseen battle unfolding just beyond the horizon. As he adjusted the leather jesses that bound the bird to him, the feeling grew stronger. It wasn't just the forest that rested, it was something more subtle, more insidious. The hawk seemed to sense it too. Its feathers ruffled ever so slightly as it perched, turning its gaze skyward, sensing the wind's shift before they even had the chance to arrive. The falconer's hand rested lightly on its back, grounding it, but his own thoughts were far from home. Was it just the evening breeze, or was something stirring in the deeper reaches of the forest? The calls of nocturnal creatures had started to quiet, and the air itself felt charged with an unspoken warning. His instincts told him it was time to leave, to retreat. Even the feeling of unease wasn't just in his mind, it was in the way. The leaves rustled, as if warning him that an invisible force was closing in. The birds, so often a chorus of life, were now silent, their songs replaced by an eerie stillness. But the falconer, ever patient, ignored the nagging voice in his head. He trusted the forest. He trusted the bird. Perhaps it was simply a trick of the mind, playing upon the shadows of the evening light. After all, it had been a long day of training, and the weariness of the journey was beginning to set in. The falconer took a deep breath, letting the cool air fill his lungs, and then released it slowly, grounding himself in the quiet of the moment. The hawk, sensing his internal conflict, stretched its wings, preparing for flight. The soft sound of feathers cutting through the air was the only sound that broke the silence. As it launched itself into the air, its wings moved with a fluidity, Keith, that could only come from a lifetime of practice. The falconer smiled as he watched the bird soar, but there was no joy in it, no feeling of triumph, only the quiet recognition that the world had changed in subtle ways he couldn't explain. As the hawk glided through the darkening sky, the falconer's gaze shifted, following its path. And then, from the corner of his eye, he saw it a flicker of movement in the shadows. It was gone before he could truly see it, but it had been burnt enough to trigger something primal within him. The wind picked up, rustling the leaves and sending a shiver down his spine. He had always trusted his instincts after all. They were all he had in a world that could be as harsh and unforgiving. Gas the wild. But now, that same instinct told him to be cautious, to stay alert. The night was alive with subtle movements, but none more than the falcon, which continued to glide effortlessly through the night sky. It was a creature of the air, a master of the hunt, yet even it seemed to sense the strange energy that had overtaken the woods. The bird's sharp eyes darted, its wings slicing the air with perfect precision. The falconer's grip tightened on the reins, a sense of unease creeping into his bones. The woods were no longer a sanctuary. They had become a battleground. But who or what was the enemy? Was it the silent whispers of the trees, the unseen creatures hiding just beyond the reach of the light? Or was it something far more dense, predator lying in wait, hidden in plain sight? The falconer knew that whatever it was drawing closer. It wasn't the wild creatures of the forest that made him uneasy. No, it was something else, something he couldn't quite put his finger on, but that weighed heavily on his chest. The bird took another circle, now closer to the ground, its eyes scanning the earth below. The falconer knew the moment he felt it, his grip tightening as he prepared for a possible confrontation. He had lived in this world long enough to understand when the balance had shifted. The tension had reached its peak, but there would be no retreat now. His bond with the falcon was too strong. They would face this challenge together. The falconer steadied himself. Whatever the threat was, it would have to come to him first. He would meet it head-on, just as he had always done with the trials of the forest. The moonlight poured through the canopy, casting long shadows across the forest floor. The hawk's wings beat once more, but this time there was a hint of urgency in its flight, as if it too could feel the shift in the air. And then it happened. A sudden rustle, a whisper of something moving through the underbrush. The falconer's heart skipped a beat. Was it the wind? No, it was too deliberate, too calculated. Something or someone was coming. The forest held its breath once more, as if waiting for the confrontation to begin. The falconer took a step forward, ready for whatever lay ahead. His falcon circled high above, its sharp gaze never faltering, always watching. In the silence, a new challenge had appeared, one that neither he nor the bird could ignore. The wind howled through the dense forest, carrying with it a sense of impending change. The falconer, though accustomed to the forest's moods, felt an unusual pressure in the air, an undeniable weight that pressed down on him as if the trees themselves were holding their breath. His falcon, still circling above, seemed to sense it too, its sharp eyes darting from shadow to shadow, searching for any sign of movement below. There was something different tonight, something elusive lurking just beyond his perception. The woodland had always been his sanctuary, a place where time slowed and he could exist in harmony with nature. But now, the very essence of the forest felt altered, as though an unseen force was manipulating its rhythms. His pulse quickened. The animal instincts that had always guided him told him that the balance was shifting, and not for the better. The hawk continued its patrol above, but its flight had changed, its movements now more deliberate, less fluid. It circled lower, its sharp eyes scanning the ground, as though it, too, had detected the subtle shift in the atmosphere. The falconer's senses were heightened, his every nerve on alert. The rustle of leaves in the wind was louder than usual, and the distant hoot of an owl seemed to echo unnervingly. He paused, listening intently. Beneath the natural sounds of the forest, there was something else. A faint creaking, like the sound of heavy footsteps on the forest floor. Yet there was no wind to explain it. The falconer's grip tightened on the reins, and his breath grew shallow. Every fiber of his being screamed that something was watching them, something that had been waiting, hidden in the depths of the forest. His thoughts flashed back to the strange events that had begun to unfold over the past. Few days, the unseasonable stillness in the woods, the absence of certain animals, the way the birds seemed to scatter at the slightest disturbance. Something had entered their domain, and it wasn't just a wandering predator. No, this felt like a presence, a force that had always been there, biding its time until now. His hand brushed the hilt of the small dagger strapped to his belt. He had fought battles before, but they had always been against nature, against beasts that followed instinct. But this was different. Whatever had entered the forest was not bound by those same rules. It moved with intent, with purpose. The falconer raised his head, looking to the sky where his bird was now circling in tighter loops. It had seen something. A flicker of motion, perhaps. It swooped lower, its wings cutting through the air with a precision that could only come from years of training. The falconer's heart raced. Was it an animal? Or something far more dangerous? A predator. He could feel the tension in the air, thick and suffocating. He could almost hear the pulse of the earth beneath him, as if it were alive, breathing in time with his own heartbeat. And then he saw it. A figure darting between the trees, so quick it almost seemed like a shadow. The falconer's breath caught in his throat, and for a moment everything seemed to freeze. His falcon, sensing the threat, screamed a sharp cry, ta, that echoed through the woods, its wings beating faster as it dove toward the shadow. Without thinking, the falconer turned and sprinted after the bird, his boots pounding the forest floor, his mind sharp and clear. The forest, once a sanctuary, now felt like a labyrinth of shadows, each one hiding a threat. The figure ahead seemed to know the terrain, darting between the trees with incredible speed. The falconer, driven by instinct, followed its path, his pulse thundering in his ears. The hawk, now in pursuit, dived with ferocity, its sharp talons outstretched, ready to strike. But the figure, in a blur of motion, vanished into the underbrush, leaving only the sound of leaves rustling in its wake. The falconer skidded to a halt, his breath ragged. He couldn't see it, but he could feel that something was out there, and it wasn't just the shadows. The presence that had been creeping through the forest had manifested, and now it was very real. The falconer's mind raced. Was it a scout, or something more sinister? Something ancient, lurking in the dark corners of the forest, waiting for the right moment to strike. He glanced up at his falcon, which had landed on a nearby branch, its eyes scanning the area with a heightened alertness. The bird's sharp gaze met his, and for a moment they shared an understanding, an unspoken bond of mutual trust. The falconer knew the bird could protect him, just as he could protect it. But tonight the stakes were higher than ever. The woods, once a familiar friend, had become a battleground, a place where silence was no longer peaceful, but rather ominous. The rustling continued, a soft sound that grew louder with each passing second. It wasn't just wind. It wasn't just animals moving in the underbrush. There was something deliberate, something purposeful in the way the forest was shifting around him. The falconer's muscles tensed, ready for whatever would come next. He took a step forward, his senses on high alert. The hawk's wings fluttered, ready for flight, its gaze unwavering. The silence of the forests deepened, thick and heavy, the calm before the storm. And then, in the distance, a low growl echoed through the trees, followed by the unmistakable sound of footsteps, heavy, deliberate, and coming closer. The falconer's heart skipped a beat. It wasn't an animal. It wasn't a forest. It was something far more dangerous, and it was closing in. The tension that had been building over the last few hours now snapped, and the falconer's mind raced with urgency. Whatever had entered the woods, it was here now, and it wasn't going to leave without a fight. Cass. The first light of dawn began to break over the distant hills. A soft glow spread across the landscape, gently illuminating the forest's sleeping form. The dense canopy of trees stirred slightly in the cool morning breeze, their leaves whispering secrets as the sun began its slow climb into the sky. The falconer, ever patient, stood at the edge of the woodland clearing, his gloved hand resting lightly upon his falcon's feathery perch. With a deliberate and practiced motion, he gently adjusted the leather jesses on the bird's legs, ensuring the tightness was perfect, firm, but not constraining. Each action he took was the result of years spent in perfecting his art, as natural chord to him as breathing, yet still carrying with it the reverence of every moment he shared with his companion. His falcon, as ever the stoic creature, adjusted its feathers, its piercing eyes scanning the forest around it, ready for what the day would bring. But for now, it seemed content to simply breathe in the cool, fresh air of the morning, its sharp gaze softening as it adjusted to the waking world. There was something incredibly serene about this time of day, the space between night and day, when the world was in transition. It was during these moments that the falconer often felt the deepest connection to the world around him, as if everything was aligning perfectly. Birds began their morning songs from the trees, their trills rising softly into the air, filling the silence with their gentle melody. The forest, like a giant, living organism, began to stir slowly, the rustling of leaves and the murmur of the stream in the distance combining to form a symphony of tranquility. As the falconer adjusted his posture, preparing for the day's flight, he couldn't help but feel a sense of gratitude for these quiet moments, these moments that could never be rushed. They were sacred. The falcon, now ruffling its wings in preparation for its first flight of the day, remained perfectly still on its perch, as though sensing the very same stillness around it. It was an animal so finely tuned to its environment, so aware of the rhythms of nature, that it was almost as if it could feel the pulse of the earth itself. The falconer allowed his breath to sync with the natural rhythms surrounding him, taking in a deep, steady breath. His mind, usually filled with thoughts and plans for the day, cleared with each exhale. He felt the pulse of the forest beneath his feet, the very earth alive with a kind of quiet energy that he knew only a few could truly appreciate. He took another slow, deliberate breath, feeling the coolness of the air and the warmth of the rising sun mixing together, creating a perfect balance. With a final glance at the bird, he gave a slight nod, signaling that the time had come for the falcon to take flight. In an instant, the falcon leapt into the air, its wings cutting through the cool morning air with powerful strokes. The movement was swift, graceful, and deliberate. The bird rose higher into the sky, its form silhouetted against the emerging sunlight, a living testament to the perfect harmony between man and nature. As it soared above the canopy, the falconer watched with pride, knowing that this moment was a culmination of everything they had worked for. There was no need for words, only the silent communication that had grown between them over the years. He stood there, rooted to the earth, as his companion took flight into the vast, open sky. With each beat of its wings, the falcon seemed to carry with it all the unspoken promises of loyalty and trust that had been forged between the two of them. The falconer's heart swelled with a quiet, profound joy as he watched the bird perform its aerial dance, circling gracefully above the treetops. The world seemed to pause in that moment, the sounds of the forest and the rhythmic beat of the bird's wings creating a peaceful harmony that filled the air. This was the life he had chosen, a life inextricably tied to the land and the creatures of the wild. Every flight was a testament to the bond they shared, one that went beyond mere companionship to something far deeper, a connection that was as old as the earth itself. As the falcon made its final descent back to the falconer's arm, it landed with perfect precision, its wings folding gracefully against its sides. The falconer, still standing motionless, reached out a gloved hand to receive his companion. With a gentle, practiced touch, he stroked the bird's feathers, the bond between them unspoken, but ever present. The moment passed in silence, but it was a silence filled with meaning. The world around them was waking, but they remained in their own little sanctuary, two souls connected by the timeless rhythms of nature. In the quiet of the morning, with the bird once again perched calmly on his arm, the falconer allowed himself a rare moment of reflection. There was something sacred in these simple moments, these small rituals of the day, where the only thing that mattered was the connection they shared. As the sun rose higher, casting its golden light over the forest, the falconer made his way deeper into the woods, the falcon by his side. The day was just beginning, and there was much to be done, but for now, there was peace in the quiet of the forest, a peace that could never be hurried. It was a peace that would stay with him as long as he was in tune with the rhythms of the earth and the flight of his loyal companion. As the early light of dawn began to creep through the thick forest canopy, the air carried the earthy scent of wet soil and pine needles, signaling a new day was about to unfold. The falconer, weary yet resolute, walked along the narrow forest path, his boots pressing into the soft moss beneath his feet. His falcon, perched carefully on his gloved hand, remained still, its sharp eyes scanning the surroundings for any sign of movement, its feathers ruffled by the cool breeze that swept through the trees. The falconer's movements were deliberate, each step taken with purpose as he made his way deeper into the heart of the forest. The quiet stillness around them felt heavy, almost sacred, as if the forest itself were holding its breath in anticipation of what the day would bring. The falconer paused for a moment, taking a deep breath and inhaling the crisp, clean air. The morning light bathed the forest in soft, golden hues, casting long shadows across the path. It was moments like this that reminded him of the deep bond he shared with his bird, a bond that had been forged over years of trust and companionship. He knew that today would bring challenges, but he also knew that the forest had its own way of providing what was needed, always offering something new, something unexpected, as he continued walking. The falconer thought about the journey that had brought him to this point. It had not been easy, but the trials and hardships had only strengthened his resolve. He had faced numerous challenges in the past, each one pushing him further into the unknown. Yet with each step he had grown stronger, more connected to the forest and the creatures that called it home. He had learned to trust not only his falcon but the rhythm of the earth itself, the whisper of the wind through the trees, the rustle of leaves beneath his feet, the distant sound of water trickling through the forest. The falcon, sensing its handler's thoughts, shifted slightly, as if aware of the falconer's inner turmoil. It was as if the bird was saying, "We are in this together," a silent reminder of their shared purpose. The falconer glanced down at his companion, feeling a sense of gratitude wash over him. They had been through so much together, through storms, through quiet days spent in the forest, through moments of danger and uncertainty. But no matter what, they had always found a way to persevere. The path before him seemed endless, winding through dense trees and thick underbrush. Yet, with each step, he felt himself growing more grounded, more attuned to the world around him. He knew that the forest was a place of change, a place where every moment was fleeting, yet eternal. It was a reminder that everything was interconnected. Tree, each leaf, each creature had its place in the grand cycle of life. The falconer smiled to himself, the weight of the world momentarily lifting from his shoulders. He had come to understand that the forest, in its quiet wisdom, held the answers to many of life's questions. And perhaps, just perhaps, the forest was ready to reveal the next chapter of his story. As they ventured deeper into the heart of the woods, the sounds of the outside world began to fade away. The cacophony of life beyond the trees was replaced by the soft rustle of the leaves, the gentle hum of insects, and the occasional call of a distant bird. The falconer could feel the change in the atmosphere. There was something different today, a shift in the energy around him. It was as if the forest itself was preparing for something significant, something that would unfold in time. The falcon on his arm was ever vigilant, its sharp eyes darting from tree to tree, its body poised, ready for whatever might come. The falconer couldn't help but marvel at the bird's grace, its quiet power. Over the years, he had come to understand the deep connection between them, a bond that went beyond mere companionship. It was a bond built on mutual respect, trust, and a silent acknowledgement of their shared journey. The falcon was more than just a partner. It was a symbol of resilience, of courage, of the unwavering will to survive. As they continued through the forest, the falconer couldn't help but think of the many days spent in this very place, hunting, learning, and growing. Each moment had been a step forward, a part of the larger story that had been unfolding in this sacred space. The forest had taught him many things: patience, humility, and the understanding that life, in all its complexity, was an intricate web of connections. Every leaf, every branch, every creature had a role to play. And just as the falcon knew when to soar and when to rest, the falconer had learned to listen to the rhythms of the forest, to trust in the process, and to embrace the unknown. The air grew thicker as they approached the clearing, and the falconer could sense that something was waiting ahead. He paused, taking a moment to survey the area. The clearing before him was bathed in dappled sunlight, the trees standing tall like silent sentinels guarding the space. It was a familiar place, one he had visited many times before, but today it felt different. The atmosphere was heavy, as if something important was about to transpire. The falconer shifted his weight, his hand still holding the bird steady. The falcon, sensing the change in the air, let out a soft cry, its wings fluttering slightly. It was a signal, a reminder that they were not alone, that the forest was alive with its own mysteries, its own stories. The falconer's heart quickened. As he took another step forward, his eyes scanning the clearing for any sign of movement. In the center of the clearing stood an ancient oak tree, its gnarled branches reaching skyward like outstretched arms. The falconer had always felt a deep sense of reverence for this tree, a sense that it was a living testament to the cycles of nature. It had witnessed countless seasons pass, countless lives come and go, yet it remained steadfast and enduring. As he approached the tree, the falconer placed a hand on its bark, feeling the rough texture beneath his fingers. He closed his eyes for a moment, allowing the energy of the tree to flow through him. There was something comforting about the tree, something that grounded him, reminded him of the larger picture. It was a reminder that life, in all its beauty and struggle, was part of a grander design, one that stretched far beyond the forest and into the farthest reaches of the universe. The falcon perched more firmly on his arm, as if sensing the weight of the moment. The falconer exhaled deeply, letting go of the tension in his shoulders. He had reached a point in his journey where he could no longer ignore the call of the forest, the pull towards something greater. The time had come to move forward, to face whatever lay ahead, whether it was known or unknown. With one last glance at the towering oak, the falconer turned and began to walk away from the clearing. The falcon followed closely, its wings barely fluttering as it maintained its watchful stance. The path ahead was unclear, but the falconer no longer felt the fear that had once gripped him. Instead, there was a sense of calm, a quiet certainty that whatever the future held, he and the falcon would face it together, as they always had. And as they ventured deeper into the heart of the forest, the falconer knew that the next chapter, of their journey was beginning. The forest, with all its wisdom and mysteries, would guide them forward, just as it always had. All he had to do was trust, and take the next step. As the first rays of dawn touched the canopy above, casting a golden hue over the forest floor, the falconer's heart beat with a quiet, steady rhythm. The quiet of the morning was unlike any other. The usual chorus of birds and rustling leaves seemed muted, as though the forest itself was holding its breath. The falcon perched gracefully on his gloved hand, its sharp eyes scanning the world around them. The falconer's gaze followed the bird's keen sight, knowing that every shift in the falcon's attention held meaning. The forest, vast and ancient, was full of secrets, many of which had been shared with him in whispers through the years. But some mysteries remained deep, untold truths that awaited discovery. The path before him was neither clear nor straight. It wound through the thickest parts of the woods, with towering trees on either side, their trunks twisting upward, forming a wall of ancient wood. It was a place where few had dared to tread, yet the falconer felt a familiar pull, as if the forest itself was calling him forward. His hand instinctively tightened around the bird's leash, ensuring that the falcon remained grounded for the time being. As they stood at the edge of the unknown, the past months had been filled with exploration, with countless steps through forests and valleys. But this place, this particular path, felt different. The air was thick with the scent of earth and moisture, the kind that came after a gentle rain, and it was filled with the promise of discovery. The falconer could feel the weight of every decision he had made leading to this pointed choice. Each pause, each quiet moment shared between him and his bird. It was a partnership that had stood the test of time, grounded in a profound sense of trust. He knew that the falcon, though silent, felt the same anticipation that stirred within him. They were both drawn to this place, not by accident, but by fate. The forest seemed to open up before them, revealing glimpses of the path that lay ahead. The trees, ancient and proud, parted just enough to offer a hint of something beyond an undiscovered trail, perhaps, or a secret glade where the world beyond had yet to encroach. The falconer stepped forward, each movement measured and deliberate, as if the very ground beneath his feet might hold some unseen force. The falcon, perched on his arm, let out a soft cry, its wings fluttering slightly, as if to signal that they, too, were ready for whatever the next step might bring. The journey had been long, filled with both challenges and moments of quiet reflection. But this moment was different. It was the first time the falconer truly felt that he was at a crossroads, standing on the threshold of something unknown. It wasn't the kind of uncertainty that instilled fear, it was something deeper, a pull toward discovery that was impossible to ignore. He had always been a man of purpose, guided by his bond with the falcon and the forest, but today that sense of purpose felt amplified, as if the very fabric of the world around him was aligned with his own heartbeat, as he walked deeper into cinematic. The path, the falconer's mind wandered back to the earliest days of his journey, when he had first stepped into the forest as a young man, eager and unafraid. He had been a stranger to these woods, unsure of the rules and rhythms that governed the wilds. But now, after years of walking this land, he felt at one with it. The forest had become a part of him, as had the falcon perched on his arm. They were not simply travelers in this space, they were part of its eternal cycle, its rhythms and its heartbeats. But the path ahead was different. It held an energy that he couldn't quite define, an anticipation that prickled his skin and sharpened his senses. The trees parted once again, and the falconer found himself in a clearing bathed in soft, diffused light. The space before him was vast, but it felt alive with potential. It was as though he had entered a place that had long been waiting for him. Silence in the clearing was profound, almost sacred, and the falcon, sensing the change, shifted its position slightly on the falconer's arm. There was something about this place, something that whispered of both endings and beginnings. It was a place where the old world and the new world seemed to converge, where the falconer and his bird could both sense that the time had come for something significant to unfold. The air in the clearing was thick with the promise of revelation, and the falconer's heart raced with a quiet excitement. He could feel the stirrings of change in the wind, the soft shift of energy that accompanied all moments of transformation. This was not just another stop on their journey. This was something that marked a turning point. He had reached a place where the answers would be found, where the pieces of the puzzle that had been carefully assembled over time would finally fall into place. The falconer took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment settle within him. The world was still and silent, save for the soft rustle of leaves, the occasional flutter of the falcon's wings, and the steady rhythm of his own heartbeat. He could feel the eyes of the forest upon him, the quiet gaze of the trees, the earth, and the skies that had watched over him for so long. This was where his story would take its next breath, where the unseen path would finally reveal itself. The falconer stepped forward, his pace slow but steady, knowing that with each movement, with each breath, he was aligning himself with something far greater than he had ever imagined. The time had come for him to step into the unknown and discover what lay hidden beyond the horizon. The falconer stood at the edge of the clearing, gazing out into the dense thicket of trees that stretched endlessly before him. The air was thick with the scent of pine and damp earth, the cool morning mist still clinging to the underbrush. His heart beat steadily in his chest, each thump resonating with the quiet pulse of the forest. In this moment, he was acutely aware of the profound silence that surrounded him, a silence that felt more like a deep breath held by the earth itself, waiting for something, an answer, a revelation, or perhaps a change. The falcon perched quietly on his arm, its keen eyes reflecting the same sense of anticipation, as if the bird too sensed that something significant was about to unfold. The path ahead was unclear, but the falconer had long learned to trust the journey, even when the destination remained hidden. His fingers gently brushed the bird's feathers, a silent gesture of reassurance. Together, they had walked countless miles, shared countless moments of stillness and action, and yet this moment felt different. This was not just another step in their shared history, it was a threshold, a place where everything that had come before was merging with the unknown that lay ahead. The forest, with its ancient trees and winding paths, had always been a sanctuary for him, a place of both refuge and revelation. But now, it seemed as if the woods themselves were waiting for him to make the next move, to step forward into the mystery that had long awaited discovery. The falconer's breath slowed, his thoughts becoming steady and focused. The deep quiet of the forest felt both comforting and unnerving, as if it were a mirror reflecting his own inner stillness. He had come to understand that the forest, like life itself, was not simply a place to pass through. It was a living entity, full of layers and meanings that were not always immediately visible. For years, he had been in the company of this land, moving through it with purpose, but now he was beginning to sense that his journey was not only about traveling through the world. It was also about discovering the deeper truths hidden within himself, truths that had always been there, waiting to be understood. He could feel the tension of the forest stretching around him, but it was not the kind of tension that came with danger or fear. It was the kind of tension that came with the unknown, the kind that suggested something was about to shift, something was on the verge of being revealed. The falcon's wings rustled slightly as it adjusted its position, its sharp eyes scanning the landscape as if it too were waiting for something. The falconer knew the bird had been trained to respond to the subtlest of cues, but today it felt as if the bird was responding to something more, something beyond mere instinct or training. Git was responding to the same pull he felt in his chest, a pull toward understanding, towards something that was just out of reach but calling him forward. The falconer's gaze turned back to the path ahead. It was not the path he had known. It was not the one that had led him through forests and across mountains. This path was different. It was unmarked, untrodden, and yet he felt an undeniable pull to step onto it. It was as though the forest itself was opening a door, inviting him to cross into a new chapter of his life, one where answers would no longer be elusive, where the questions that had plagued him for so long would finally find their resolution. But the question that lingered in his mind was simple. Was he ready to face what lay ahead? For a moment, he stood still, allowing the silence to deepen, to fill the space between him and the forest. He could hear the faint rustling of leaves in the breeze, the distant call of an owl waking from its night's rest. The world felt alive, and yet it was as if it had paused, holding its breath, waiting for his next move. His hand tightened around the falcon's leash, feeling the familiar texture of the bird's feathers beneath his fingers. The bond they shared was more than just one of companionship, was a partnership built on trust, respect, and shared experience. The falcon had always been his guide in many ways, and now, as they stood on the edge of this new journey, he could not help but feel that they were about to discover something together that neither had anticipated. Slowly, the falconer began to walk forward. His steps were deliberate, each one carrying him deeper into the unknown. He had learned long ago that the path to understanding was never a straight line. It was a winding, twisting journey that took unexpected turns, often leading to places of discomfort and challenge. But it was also a journey that brought growth, wisdom, and ultimately, peace. And as he moved forward, the falcon beside him, he felt a deep sense of knowing this was the moment he had been waiting for, the moment when everything would come. Together, when the unseen would become visible, and when the questions that had lingered in his mind would finally be answered. The forest, ever patient, seemed to welcome him into its depths, its ancient trees standing as silent sentinels, watching over the falconer and his companion. The path before him seemed to stretch on endlessly, yet it was no longer a mystery to be feared. It was a path to be embraced, for it held the answers he had sought for so long. With each step, the falconer's resolve grew stronger, his heart steadier. The time for uncertainty had passed. The time for understanding had arrived. And so, with quiet determination, the falconer continued onward, knowing that he was not walking alone. The forest, the falcon, and the unspoken truths of the world around him all walked with him, guiding him toward the moment of revelation that awaited just beyond the horizon. The morning sun filtered through the thick canopy of trees, casting a soft glow across the forest floor, where the air was fresh with the scent of dew and earth. It was a still, almost sacred silence that hung in the air, as though the woods themselves were holding their breath, waiting for the next step. The falconer stood motionless, his hand resting lightly on the falcon's feathers, both of them attuned to the world around them in a way that went beyond mere instinct. There was a subtle, almost imperceptible shift in the energy of the forest, something that had always been there, beneath the rustling of leaves and the calls of distant birds, but which now seemed to rise to the surface with a quiet intensity. It was as if the forest, in all its ancient wisdom, was revealing a secret, a hidden truth that had always been present, but had never been fully understood. The falcon, ever the watchful companion, shifted slightly on his arm, its sharp eyes scanning the surrounding woods, as though it too felt the change in the air. The falconer's gaze followed the bird's lead, and for a moment it seemed as though the entire world had slowed down. The movements of the forest, the flicker of light through the branches, all suspended in time. In this stillness, the falconer felt a deep connection, not just with the bird, but with everything around him, the trees, the earth, the sky above all, woven together in a quiet symphony that only he seemed to fully hear. It was a symphony of silence, a soundless music that resonated deeply within his heart, a melody that spoke of ancient truths and timeless rhythms. The falconer closed his eyes for a brief moment, allowing the forest song to wash over him. It was not a sound that could be heard with the ears, but one that was felt with the solemn melody composed not of notes, but of the subtle hum of life, of everything that had ever been, and everything that would come to be. The falcon's wings rustled gently as it adjusted its position, and in that quiet movement, the falconer felt the world shift once more. The rhythm of the forest seemed to sync with his heartbeat, the pulse of life flowing through the trees and the earth, connecting everything in a seamless, unbroken flow. The falconer's breath deepened, slow and steady, as if he too were becoming part of this great, invisible symphony. He had always known that the world was full of hidden connections, but in this moment he was more aware of them than ever before. The forest, the falcon, the sky, everything was connected, intertwined in a delicate balance that had existed long before him and would continue long after he was gone. It was a humbling realization, one that filled him with both awe and peace. He had spent so many years searching for answers, seeking understanding, but now, in the quiet of the forest, he realized that perhaps the answers had always been here, in the very fabric of the world around him. It wasn't a matter of finding something new, it was a matter of recognizing what had always been present, of learning to listen to the quiet symphony of life. The falconer turned his gaze upward, following the path of a bird that soared high above the treetops, its wings cutting through the air with effortless grace. For a brief moment, the falconer felt a flicker of longing, a desire to join the bird in its flight, to feel the wind beneath his own wings, to experience the freedom that only the sky could offer. But he knew, in that moment, that his place was here, on the ground, listening to the music of the earth, understanding the rhythms of the forest. The bird, the falcon, the falconer, they were all part of this great cycle, this unbroken song that played in the background of life. And so the falconer stood still, his heart beating in time with the forest's rhythm, his body relaxed, his mind clear. He had no need to search for anything more. He had everything he needed right here, in the silence, in the stillness, in the gentle beat of his own heart. Time seemed to stretch out before him, an endless expanse of quiet moments that would continue as long as he was able to listen. Stucker the falcon, perched calmly on his arm, shifted again, this time with purpose. The falconer, ever attuned to the bird's movements, knew that the moment was approaching. The moment when the song of the forest would reach its crescendo, when the next step in their journey would reveal itself. And so, with quiet resolve, he allowed himself to surrender to the flow of the moment, trusting that the symphony would guide him where he needed to go. The forest, in its infinite wisdom, would show the way. The falconer breathed deeply once more, feeling the connection between himself, the bird, and the world around him, knowing that this was where he was meant to be here, in this moment, listening to the music of life. And as the bird took flight once again, soaring into the sky, the falconer followed, his heart in perfect harmony with the rhythm of the world. The early morning mist lingered softly, wrapping the forest in a veil of quiet mystery. As the falconer stood still, breathing deeply in the cool, crisp air, the towering trees above swayed gently in the wind, their leaves whispering secrets only the earth could understand. Each step he took was measured and deliberate, a slow, purposeful movement as he guided the falcon along the path, their bond silently pulsing between them like an unspoken promise. The forest, ancient and wise, seemed to recognize the presence of the falconer and his bird, its heartbeat syncing with theirs, creating a rhythm that reverberated through the very soil beneath their feet. There was no rush in the air, no need to hurry, just the quiet hum of life unfolding at its own pace. It was in these moments, when time seemed to stretch infinitely, that the falconer truly felt the depth of the world around him. The trees towered above, their branches thick with the weight of countless seasons, their roots sunk deep into the earth, silently supporting everything that grew above. And in the quiet between the rustling of the leaves, he felt a connection to something ancient, something larger than himself. He had long known that the forest was not just a place, but a living, breathing entity, vast network of life that sustained and supported all who called it home. The falconer's hand tightened just slightly on the leather reins, signaling to the falcon that it was time to move forward. The bird, perched quietly on his gloved arm, fluttered its wings in acknowledgement, its sharp eyes scanning the horizon with calm precision. The sun, still hidden behind the layers of mist, began to pierce through the canopy, sending gentle rays of light dappling the ground in patches of golden warmth. It was a moment of perfect serenity, where the world seemed to pause, and the falconer allowed himself to sink deeper into the present, into the harmony of the forest. With every step, he felt as though he was moving not just through the woods, but through time itself, walking the path of those who had come before him, those who had shared this sacred connection with the land. There was a certain quiet reverence in the air, as if the very soil beneath him whispered its secrets to those who knew how to listen. The falconer's heart beat in sync with the rhythm of the forest, the pulse of the earth beneath his feet, and the steady breath of the falcon cresting on his arm. He did not know what lay ahead on this path, whether it would take him deeper into the woods, or perhaps lead him out into the open fields. He did not need to know. The journey, as always, was the point. The journey, with all its twists and turns, was what shaped them both man and bird, what bound them together in this shared existence. The forest had its own way of revealing what was needed, and the falconer had learned over time to trust in the path, even when it was unclear, even when it seemed to disappear into the mist. There was something powerful in the unknown, in the spaces between what was visible and what was hidden. The falconer closed his eyes for a moment, allowing the cool, damp air to fill his lungs, feeling the pulse of life flow through him. The world seemed to speak to him in ways that words could never capture. The crackling of the leaves underfoot, distant call of a bird. The whisper of the wind through the branches, these were the sounds that told the story of the forest. They spoke of patience, of growth, of cycles that repeated endlessly, of life and death, and everything in between. The falcon, sensing a shift in the air, lifted its wings slightly, preparing to take flight. The falconer knew that this moment had arrived, the moment when the forest would reveal its next step, its next direction. He had no need for maps, no need for signs. The forest had always shown him the way. The falconer stood for a moment longer, waiting for the right moment to continue. It was a feeling, an intuition, that told him when to move forward. The falcon, now fully alert, tilted its head and looked at the falconer, its golden eyes bright, with the shared understanding that the journey was about to take another turn. Slowly, with a deliberate movement, the falconer raised his arm and released the bird into the air. It took flight with powerful wings, soaring high above the trees, its sharp eyes scanning the ground below. The falconer watched as the bird disappeared into the distance, following the unseen currents of the air, trusting in the path that had been laid before them. As he began to walk once more, his heart filled with a quiet certainty. The forest had shown him the way. It always did. And in this quiet moment he understood that the true path was never the one that was clearly visible, it was the one that had always been there, just beneath the surface, waiting to be discovered. The falconer walked on, his footsteps steady and sure, guided by the invisible threads that connected him to the forest, to the bird, and to the world around him. There was no need to search for the path. It was already there, in the silence, in the stillness, waiting to be followed. And as he walked, he felt a deep sense of peace settle over him, knowing that whatever lay ahead, he was exactly where he needed to be. With each step, the world seemed to grow quieter, the usual sounds of the forest growing distant, leaving only the soft murmur of the wind and the occasional snap of a twig underfoot. The falcon, perched on his arm, remained still, its keen eyes, scanning the path ahead, alert and watchful. There was a strange calm in the air, a sense of anticipation that seemed to wrap around them both, pulling them deeper into the woods. It was as though the forest itself had drawn them in, guiding them toward something unknown. The falconer did not question it. He trusted the forest, trusted the journey. The bond between him and his bird was unspoken, but undeniable. It was a connection forged through years of quiet moments like this one, moments spent in the presence of nature where words were unnecessary. The falconer paused for a moment, allowing the cool evening air to wash over him. His senses heightened in the stillness of the woods. He felt the pulse of the earth beneath his feet, the steady beat of life that flowed through everything around him. The trees, ancient and wise, stood tall and strong, their roots stretching deep into the earth, connecting them to something far beyond the surface. It was as if the very ground beneath him was alive, breathing, and he was but a small part of a much larger whole. In that moment he felt a deep sense of belonging, as though the forest had always been his home. He closed his eyes for a brief moment, letting the peace of the woods settle over him. There was no need for thoughts or worries here, only the steady rhythm of his own breath and the quiet pulse of the forest around him. The falconer felt as if he were part of something much greater than himself, a small piece of an ancient puzzle that had been unfolding long before he had ever set foot in these woods. As he opened his eyes, he saw something in the distance, just beyond the trees. The light from the setting sun caught the edge of a clearing, casting a soft, golden glow on the ground. It was a place he had never seen before, but something deep within him told him that it was where he was meant to be. Slowly, he began to walk toward it, his footsteps light and steady, his heart beating in time with the rhythm of the forest. The falcon, sensing his movement, shifted slightly on his arm, its feathers rustling softly in the evening air. It was a quiet acknowledgment of the path they were walking, a shared understanding that they were both on this journey together, each step bringing them closer to something unknown. The falconer entered the clearing. He felt a shift in the air, a subtle change that he could not quite explain. The trees around him seemed to lean in closer, their branches reaching out like ancient arms, as if the forest itself was watching. The clearing was bathed in the soft glow of the setting sun, the grass underfoot cool and soft, and the air thick with the scent of wildflowers. It was a place of stillness, a place where time seemed to slow, and the world outside the forest felt distant, almost unreal. The falconer stood there for a moment, taking it all in. He had walked this path for so long, but this was something different. It was as if the forest had led him here, to this exact spot, to this moment in time. The falcon, sensing the change, lifted its wings slightly, its sharp eyes scanning the clearing with a quiet intensity. It was as if the bird knew that something significant was unfolding, that they had arrived at a place of meaning. The falconer could feel the weight of the moment, the stillness that surrounded them both. He did not know what was waiting for him here, what the forest had in store for him, but he knew that it was important. There was a quiet understanding between him and the bird, a shared sense of purpose. The moment seemed to stretch on, the world around them holding its breath. And then, as if on cue, the wind shifted, and the first star appeared in the sky, a small but brilliant point of light that seemed to pierce the darkness. The falconer took a deep breath, letting the cool air fill his lungs, and as he exhaled, he felt a sense of peace wash over him. Whatever lay ahead, he knew that he was ready. The forest had brought him here for a reason, and he trusted that it would show him the way. The falcon, still perched on his arm, ruffled its feathers, its sharp eyes glinting in the fading light. Together, they stood in the clearing, two beings connected by something deeper than words, bound by the forest, by the path they had walked, and by the journey that was still unfolding before them. There was no need to rush, no need to search for answers. The forest would reveal them in its own time, and in that moment, the falconer knew that he was exactly where he was meant to be. As the final rays of twilight faded into the deepening blue of night, the falconer stood at the edge of the ancient forest, looking back at the place that had been his home, his guide, and his sanctuary for so long. The forest, with its towering trees and whispering leaves, had been the keeper of his secrets, the witness to his struggles, and the silent companion through countless moments of reflection and quiet strength. Now, as he took one last look at the path that had brought him to this point, there was a deep sense of peace within him, a calm acceptance that his journey here was complete. His falcon, perched gracefully on his gloved arm, ruffled its feathers in the cool evening air, its sharp eyes glinting in the dim light as if sensing the finality of the moment. The bond between the falcon and its master had been forged over years of shared experiences, silent understanding, and unwavering trust. Together they had ventured through countless landscapes, faced challenges, and experienced the deep, unspoken connection that can only be found in the wilds of nature. Now, as they stood on the precipice of the unknown, the falconer knew that their journey was not truly over, was simply evolving into something new. He felt the weight of the forest's presence behind him, the steady rhythm of the earth beneath his feet, and the subtle energy of the night air around him. The forest had always been more than just a place. It had been a living entity, a teacher, and a reminder that all things are connected. And though he was now ready to leave its embrace, he knew that it would always be with him, like a thread woven through the fabric of his life. The falconer took a deep breath, letting the cool air fill his lungs. The sky above was now a blanket of stars, their distant light reflecting the quiet wonder of the world. It was as if the universe itself was watching, waiting for him to take the next step, with a final, tender stroke of his falcon's feathers. The falconer whispered a silent promise to the bird to continue walking together, wherever life would lead them. And with that promise, he began to turn away from the forest, his footsteps soft on the earth as he walked toward the unknown. The falcon, ever watchful and ever loyal, flew into the night sky, its wings slicing through the air with practiced grace. For a moment, the falconer stood still, watching the bird soar into the distance, feeling the rush of the wind as it passed. There was no fear in this moment, only a sense of release, of letting go, knowing that the forest, the bird, and the journey would remain with him in ways that words could not fully capture. The falconer continued his walk, each step carrying him further from the heart of the forest, but never truly away from it. The sounds of the woodland once so familiar faded into the background as he moved forward, but their essence remained, a constant presence in the rhythm of his breath and the beat of his heart. He could feel the pulse of the earth beneath him, the steady pulse of life that connected him to everything around him. It was the same rhythm that had guided him through the forest, the same rhythm that would carry him through the world beyond. The night was cool and still, and the world seemed to be holding its breath. The falconer knew that this was the moment he had been waiting for, the moment when the past and the future converged. His journey had led him here, to this place of quiet reflection, and now it was time to let go, to move forward into the unknown with the strength and wisdom he had gained along the way. The path ahead was unclear, but it was also full of possibility. The falconer smiled softly, a sense of contentment filling him as he continued to walk, the soft sound of his footsteps the only sound in the still night. His heart was light, his spirit at peace, knowing that he had done everything he had set out to do. The falcon would continue to soar, its wings cutting through the night air with the same grace it had always known. And the falconer, though his journey through the forest was complete, would carry its spirit with him, a silent companion, as he ventured into the future. The forest had taught him many things about patience, about trust, about the quiet strength that lies in the heart of nature. But perhaps the greatest lesson was this, that all journeys, no matter how long, must eventually come to an end, and in that end there is always a new beginning, a new path waiting to be discovered. As the falconer walked into the darkness, he knew that this was only the beginning of a new chapter, one that would unfold in ways he could not yet imagine. The stars above seemed to shimmer with promise, as if the universe itself was telling him that the journey would continue in its own time, in its own way. And so, with each step, the falconer walked forward, his heart open to whatever the future held, knowing that, no matter where the road would take him, the forest and the falcon would always be with him, forever guiding him along the way. The journey had not truly ended, it had only just begun.